Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the Bad at Magic podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things, and welcome to episode 97.
So, Ben, did you know that the Boston Marathon is the world's oldest annual running marathon?
I knew it had some kind of historical significance, but I didn't know it had a claim that audacious.
It's the oldest one.
Wow.
So they brought
Now, hold on, Josh. Isn't the name Marathon derived from a place in Greece?
I said the oldest annual running marathon.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so don't suck me into the ancient Greek warrior dude who ran like the 26 miles from wherever to marathon or from marathon to wherever, and then said, what did he say? Like victory, and then died. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
nowadays guys do that like 100 days in a row.
Ugh. That just tells you how hard that guy was going that day.
Or how little value they put on that kind of stamina.
Well, the Boston Marathon was ran. They revived it after the Summer Olympics brought it back in Athens in 1896.
Okay.
The first Boston Marathon was run by 15 people, and it was won by John J.J. McDermott, who won it with a time of 2 hours, 55 minutes, and 10 seconds, which... that would have been a world record until 1909, but they didn't record world records that early.
Wow. That's pretty good. One of 15, and he must have just completely blown everybody else's doors off.
No, it was actually neck and neck with the other people that were running it, because this is the thing. Nobody ran back in the late 1800s.
Right.
So the only 15 people that ran this thing were like running psychos, and everybody thought they were crazy.
My favorite line about that is from the late 1800s in Back to the Future Part 3. And Emmett's sitting at the bar holding a drink. And he's like, in the future, people run for entertainment.
Yeah.
Do you remember what the cowboy says? Run for fun? What the heck kind of fun is that?
So the current world record for comparison is 2 hours and 1 minute and 9 seconds. That was set just in 2022. And that's 30% faster.
Wow. Amazing.
And this marathon was ran for the first time on April 19th, 1897.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty good claim to fame for how long they've been the longest annual marathon. They've taken a few. Did they run it the year following the bombing?
They did, but they did not run it in 2020 due to the pandemic.
Huh.
They had a virtual option where people could like log in at the same time and all do it together.
When I was deployed to Al Udeid in Qatar once, they were running the Boston Marathon on base remotely. Like at the same time, in conjunction with it, anybody that signed up could run 26 miles on the base under official timekeepers and be considered like remote participants.
That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, when you're the oldest, you get to be the keeper of all the traditions and stuff.
Have you ever ran a marathon, Ben?
I did once. We talked about it on the podcast. If you remember.
Yeah, that wasn't. I mean, like, did you ran an actual marathon, like with tens of thousands of people and like a start and a finish line?
I ran 26.2 miles consecutively in about 3 hours.
So here's the difference. You ran 26.2 miles. You did not run a marathon. We are talking about two different things.
What? I have to have other people around me for it to count?
Not for it to count, but to get the full experience. Like running 26 miles, yeah, that's a hell of a workout, and good on you for doing it. But there's nothing, like there's no endorphin or adrenaline rush like doing it with all these other people.
No doubt, but I did it during like the tail end of COVID when I just needed something to do to stay sane.
COVID didn't stop you from doing anything else.
There were no public races going on at the time. Well, in 1897, the Boston Marathon started. Thank you, Boston. All right, Josh, I think is tax season officially over now?
Tax season is officially over. Taxes were due and filed on April 18th, a couple weeks ago now. So we are good. Done.
So you've reduced your weekly working hours by 20%, I'm assuming.
We are no longer required to work on Saturdays. Yes. Not this past week, but the week before was the first week where I didn't have to work a Saturday, and it was wonderful.
Did you feel like a stretched back rubber band? Like, was there a bunch of stuff that you needed to do that had been waiting?
So I had intended to, like, in my mind all through tax season, like, oh man, I'm going to get all these days off and it's going to be so great. I'm going to sleep in every day and I'm going to be so lazy. And that's absolutely not what happened. Because we're talking about just, household projects, things that got to get done that I've been putting on the back burner because I just didn't have time and I didn't want to dedicate whole the only days off that I had to do them.
Is it okay? I'm going to use a term that's probably out of use, but was it the honeydew list? Like who's the keeper of that stuff? Is it like now you got some free time, do this stuff, or now that I got some free time, I got a bunch of stuff I wanted to do?
It kind of goes both ways, because my wife will mention things that she wants to do, and then some of those things that she wants to do are clearly things that she's going to do, and I have no input in whatsoever, aside from maybe like today I had to go to Home Depot to get a bag of potting soil.
Right.
I don't care about potted plants at all. So that's going to be the sum total of my contribution to that hobby.
Okay,
but
you got a bag of potting soil.
Other things, though, well, she mentioned, like, for example, we're keeping our kids home this summer. We're not going to send them to summer camp. And so we're trying to plan ahead and build a structured day for them to be doing things and not be complete couch potatoes the whole summer.
Okay.
So my wife did a great job getting them like activity workbooks and things, just keep them sharp for school. And so they're going to have to do those and their chores every day for the first half of the day before they can even think about goofing off or playing games or whatever. And then we'll do set screen times, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But they needed a spot or a place to do this said homework that wasn't going to bother me when I'm doing my actual work. So, and that's what the conversation was. Like, they need someplace to go. And I'm like, oh, well, let's figure that out. And then between the two of us, it started with, well, let's renovate this entire spare bedroom. We'll repaint the walls. We'll rip up the floors and put down linoleum. We'll take this entire closet out and replace it with custom cabinetry. And then eventually we dialed that way back to, well, let's just put in a big, nice desk that we can build so the kids can have some space.
What was in the space where the desk is now?
There was an old set of drawers, like an old dresser that we had. So when we first had our son Carter, we bought a whole bedroom set with a baby furniture. And so there's a changing table, which is like a unique height for a dresser to be, but it's like a little higher than average, but it's still got drawers and stuff underneath it. And the idea is it's high enough that you can stand at it and like change a baby there. But we still have it because it's a nice chest of drawers. But it fits perfectly on the other side of the room, so we just move that over there, and then we put the desk where it is now.
Okay, so I thought I was going to ask you about what you're doing with your time now that tax season's over, and you would regale me with stories of drinking beer and playing video games, and instead you're in the garage making custom cabinetry.
The first Saturday that I had off, I did sleep in. I didn't get up until 8 o'clock, and then I spent literally all day until like 7 o'clock that night in the garage, like making custom furniture.
Wow. Okay. Well, I know that kind of thing takes time because, like, you got to cut out all the pieces and assemble them, and then you got to, like, paint them and then wait for, like, the glue to dry and the stain to dry and stuff like that, and you got to keep coming back to it.
Only if you're a bad planner, Ben. Like, a project like this has multiple, like, concurrent things that can happen concurrently, and so you plan it out like, oh, well, I like
it. Do you have a Gantt chart for this thing? Because I know for a fact you did it 2 Saturdays in a row, and you showed some painting, and he says, I still need to do a thing, but it's because you ran out of time, not because you planned poorly.
I had to stop. Yeah, I had to stop today to come out and record the podcast. I was working on the desk like right before I came out here. But no, nice. there was things where I knew. It was like, oh, well, I can stain the front of the drawers now, and then while those are drying, I can go and I can cut the custom holes for, like, I'm putting grommets in the desk so we can run cables through it. I'm putting in a custom, like, it's going to be an outlet with USB plugs that sits on the desk so you can charge USB devices right there on top of it.
Wow.
I got like a big 20 plug, multiple outlet, like a surge protector thing that I'll bolt onto the bottom, and then all the cable management and stuff needs to go underneath. Like, listen, there's things that I can do, and they can go concurrently, so there's no waiting around.
Okay, so are you doing one in each kid's room?
No, this is our spare. It's a spare bedroom that we just kind of use as an auxiliary room. So we just made it. This desk is almost 7 feet wide, and it's got drawers on either end, and it's going to have plenty of space for both of them to sit next to each other.
I see the requirements coming together. They're going to be there during the summer. You guys are going to be working. She's going to be in the kitchen. You're going to be in the casita, or other way around.
Other way around, yeah.
And you need the kids to be at home because you didn't want to send them to summer camp, but you need them in the other room, but you didn't really have a space that wasn't their bedrooms in order for them to be somewhere doing something.
Yes. They needed like a desktop so they can sit and do homework, and then also a place, some space where once they are done with homework that they can do some gaming. Here's my interjection into this, is we also bought them, like I've upgraded my computer so many times that I realized that I just needed 2 more pieces, and then I can take all the old pieces and make a new computer.
Right?
So I bought 2 things, and I built a new computer out of the old computer. And so now my daughter has her own computer. My son is going to use my wife's desktop computer.
Okay, I love this, Josh. This is a living example of the ship of Theseus. Which one is your computer?
Obviously, the one that I use every day.
No,
the one that I'm
it's
recording
not.
on right now. Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
So every single part has been replaced from the original version. That doesn't matter. This is still my computer.
I also love that your family lets your aspirations for how to deliberately raise your children in a way that's beneficial to them and meets your requirements for your vocation, and that drives objectives that include home renovations.
I mean, home renovation, like I said, we came down from that.
You installed cabinetry, the kind that won't be taken out when you move out of the house.
Oh, no. It's not bolted to the wall or nothing. I could totally take this desk with me with, a little bit of extra work.
Yeah, but why would you do that? It's just part of the room now.
Most likely, yeah, it's just part of the room. But it's still, I could, if I wanted to, take the desk with me.
Okay, that reminds me of something. I'll tell you a story real quick. So, you know how when you go to other parts of the world, things are different? Like when we came to Louisiana, they have this weird construction thing in this neighborhood where no one has garages that face the street.
Oh, okay.
So the front of your house will have like a wraparound porch and you can't see, but they still have cars. The driveway goes up the side and goes and parks in the side-facing garage or around the back and parks in a back-facing garage.
Okay.
It's just a peculiarity of the local architecture, and it makes it look and feel Southern. And if you were driving through the neighborhood, you'd be like, this looks and feels Southern, but you wouldn't know why. One of the reasons is they don't have front-facing garages. If you go to Idaho, on the other hand, it's like all garage with the little house,
with the little house on the side, yeah. So is it just the land plots aren't as wide? Like you need to tuck the garage back around behind the house because
I think it's a visual preference. I think it's the way they want it to look.
I want to have a car, but I don't want people to know that I have a car.
Right. I brought that up because there's also international flavors of this. I mean, there's obviously some that are driven by necessity because of different socioeconomic status and that kind of thing. But when we got to northern Italy, the area we moved to is roughly of the same affluence as anywhere I've lived in America. It was in a wealthy part of Italy, and it's, very first world. And there was something about the houses that I wasn't quite that we found out that we never do in America, and that is Italians are very peculiar about their kitchens. And now when I say their kitchens, I mean the place where you cook.
Okay.
The way that we fix this in America is we're like, oh, this kitchen's outdated. When I move into the house, I'm going to renovate it. But the way the Italians do it is a lot of their stuff in the kitchen, including the sink and the cabinets and everything that holds the dishes, is modular. And when they move out, they take it with them.
The kitchen. They take the cabinetry and all that.
Everything with them. So if you go into a house that's vacant, there's just an empty space where the kitchen would go. There's no sink.
Huh. They're expecting you to bring your own kitchen.
Right. Or look at the space and buy a kitchen that suits your needs and meets your preferences.
So when you went and moved into Italy and you lived off base, did you have to get your own kitchen?
You nailed it. This is a problem for the Americans who are rotating in and out, because if an Italian rotates through the house and takes the kitchen and an American comes, they're not bringing a kitchen with them.
Took the kitchen with them. Excuse me, this house that I moved into has no kitchen.
So the Americans tend to rotate through houses that were previously occupied by an American who left the kitchen there.
Which is, it's kind of them to leave the kitchen there. And I'm sure that baffles the Italians.
Right? And you'd have the opposite problem. If you're an American leaving a house and you left the kitchen, the Italians would be like, what'd you leave your kitchen for? I've got my own.
Excuse me, I have a problem with the house I moved into. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. What's the problem? They took everything and the kitchen sink.
All right, Josh, I'm coming up on my 1 month countdown till I depart for Kuwait.
Ooh, 1 month? That fast? Dude,
yeah,
that's going to be a problem.
It's a month away. We'll record episode 99 like the weekend before I depart, and then I'll be out the door.
Our episode 100 extravaganza is going to be with you on the other side of the planet.
Yes.
That's going to put a real strain on the IT infrastructure.
Yeah, but let's talk about that for a minute. So we'll talk about episode 100, and then I'll come back to Kuwait. For episode 100, I want to make it feel a bit like an entry point for new listeners, so they don't feel like, oh, geez, this podcast has been going so long, I've got to go back and listen to everything. One of the things I want to do is a Q&A. So, listeners, I'll put up a thread on Facebook and on Reddit, and so that you can put your questions up there. The kind of stuff. Well, I don't know. Do you want to give parameters for questions?
Nope. Send in your questions if they're inappropriate. We won't answer them. So try to keep them appropriate.
Yeah. I was thinking, should we? I don't know. I think we'll go back and maybe relive some of our best episodes, some of the repeating gags that we have.
I mean, we can talk about those, but is this going to turn into one of those clip shows, like an old sitcom that you hate to watch? Like, oh, it's a clip show, and then you switch to the next episode?
You dislike clip shows?
Those are the worst episodes. Don't even. Oh, Ben. No! I already saw these clips. Give me new stuff.
Oh, man. I had never thought that was a thing that didn't please everyone.
Well, that needs to be one of the polls that you put up on the social media, because I can't be the other one that hates.
Should we do a clip show?
No, we're absolutely not doing a clip show. Like, that's a terrible entry point. It's like, oh, this podcast is just telling me about all the inside jokes they have. Click, next episode.
All right, I want to talk about something I'm going through right now, something that I go through quite frequently as a member of the military, that maybe if you live kind of a static, I don't know, maybe it's less common now. Maybe I'm assuming things about our listeners and they are like, whatever, I already know about this. But in life, you find a place to live and you get a job and you stay there, and the transitions in life are the ones that happen kind of naturally. You get married, you have kids, the kids leave the house, you maybe at some point change jobs for developmental reasons. Maybe you get some additional professional education. But for the most part, your life kind of follows a predictable track. But if for whatever reason you're going to make a change, there's a lot of chaos that happens in the transformative period.
Okay. Like what kind of change inspires this kind of chaos?
Yes. So I want to talk about it in a very disconnected way that doesn't relate specifically to my military experience. And that is, whatever I'm doing right now, I care about, but I'm going to stop doing that and I'm going to start doing something else. And so there's a transitionary period where I have to make sure that what I'm doing right now kind of carries on without me. But I'm also getting ready for what I'm about to do next.
So a good example of this is people in the military, because at least when I was in, we moved so often, you didn't accumulate a lot of stuff. Like a lot of in your household, like all the decor and all the stuff that you get when you just live in someplace for a long time, you didn't get. Like, my garage is now overflowing, and like every time my wife wants to buy a new thing, I have to ask her, where are we going to put this thing, because we are running out of storage in this house, because we haven't moved in so long, because we haven't had to because of the military, that we've just accumulated junk.
Right. So if you moved right now, you would like make a big pile of all your scrap lumber. You put your hands on your hips and stare at it and be like, and get rid of most of it, if not all of it.
There would be several 100 pounds of stuff in our house that would get donated like that day to a charity. But because I'm not having to move and there's no forced transitionary period that you're talking about, it just kind of accumulates.
So one way my family's going to be undertaking this particular transition this time is because I will be retiring out of here and I'm going to go away and come back to here. The military will move all of my household goods one last time.
Yep, and you've got to tell them where you want it.
Right, and I got to pick a place, but they give me a year to pick, so I could go without it. I could just have them take it and not send it somewhere, and then a year from now I could say, okay, here's where I want it, and they'll bring it there and have paid for the storage and everything in between.
Yeah, because that's a realistic thing that happens. Like, oh, I don't need all of my furniture or household goods for a year. Let me nomad my way across the country with, a wife and 4 kids and figure out where I want to settle.
So I've done this twice in my life. Once in 1992, when my dad separated from the Air Force, he moved, didn't find a permanent job. I slept on the floor for a year. We used our car seats for furniture. I lived out of a suitcase for a year. Yeah, you could do that kind of thing. Yeah, we don't like it, but here's what's going to happen this time. When I leave, my wife is going to take our 3 kids that are still at home and move to my parents' house, which happens to be vacant right now because they're serving a full-time mission for the church. So they'll be there, but they don't need to take all of our household goods because my parents' house is full of household goods right now. They don't need beds or sofas or washing machines or fridges or anything like that. So over the course of the next month, we're going to be taking all of our household goods and putting them into a storage unit. So that then when we decide where we want to move, I can tell the Air Force and they'll pay to move it wherever. But they won't pay right now to move it.
What's the time between when you return from your deployment and when you retire?
About 4 months.
That's cutting it close. Like that sounds ridiculous to people that are listening that don't understand military processes. But
No.
making that big of a jump in career in 4 months is that's tight.
No, it's 4 months that I'll be back here and my family won't be here and I won't be able to leave.
Right, because you haven't had retired yet.
Right, but I won't technically retire until next August.
Oh, well, yeah, that's big. You got like leave accumulated and all that stuff or whatever.
Right. But anyway, so that's what's happening at the house. And when you're going to do that kind of thing in your house, there's this tension. You'd understand it if you think through each individual thing. Like right now, I'm recording the podcast in my normal space where I record it. If I take anything right here and put it into storage, that's going to make it harder for me to go on living my normal life. In the kitchen, all of the food. You have your normal rhythms of food, like the bottle of ketchup in the fridge. If I ran out of ketchup right now, it wouldn't be a good idea to go buy a brand new big bottle of ketchup. I might just grab a handful of packets next time I was at McDonald's or something.
Because it's all going to go away. You're going to have to do something with all of this stuff.
I've got 100 pounds, I don't know, just a quantity of perishable food or food that's been opened that isn't going to go into storage well and probably wouldn't travel across the country very well. So basically, if I don't eat my way through that between now and when we move out, it's just going to be waste.
So, for some reason during COVID, my wife and I were like prescribed to some like co-op farming thing that we'd go once a week and get all of these fresh vegetables.
I remember you talking about this on the podcast.
Yeah, it was great. But one of the things that we got from them was a 1 gallon can of pinto beans.
Uh-huh.
That has
dry pinto beans.
Yeah, I think they're dry pinto beans. Yeah. Oh no!
It's a number 10 can, one of those steel cans.
Yeah, it's like it's a big old can, like
vacuum sealed.
Yeah. But it's been in my closet now for like 3 years. And every time we see it, we're like, we need to just eat these beans. And it's just never going to happen.
You know, that's a good thing to have. That's a good zombie apocalypse thing. You know, they're high in protein and calories. Like, you don't want to eat them now. But if, like, the grocery stores melt down and people start looting, like, we got that can of beans. That'll last us a week.
I think we did a zombie apocalypse episode. And like, it's just not good for anybody.
No, it's really not. Okay, so there's that in the kitchen. And my wife and I kind of have tension over this because I don't want to just have to throw everything away, but she doesn't want to change the way that we live our life. Like, well, we got to stop buying perishables and eat our way through the perishables that we already have, but then it makes you have weird meals.
Yeah, like I don't want to heat up a 1 gallon can of pinto beans and just like, give everybody a spoon like, all right, here's dinner.
Right. So I accidentally bought 2 boxes of waffle mix. So today I just like made a whole bunch of waffles and everyone ate them and they were glad. But that's not going to be so great when we like run out of maple syrup or something because I'm not going to buy another bottle.
So what you have is this ticking time, this ticking clock where everything in this house is going to have to leave. And so we need to stop bringing more stuff into the house in the meantime.
Right. And then there's the time period where you're like, okay, we want to wait as long as possible before we start doing this, but we don't want to wait too long where we're going to run out of time.
When are the movers actually showing up to box everything?
No movers are coming.
Well, you said you're putting everything into storage.
Yeah, we're going to do it.
Why would you do it and not have the Air Force do it?
Because I don't have any impetus for the Air Force to do it.
Oh, you don't have the triggering event to actually have them do it.
No, I do not.
Will they move it from a storage unit that you purchased into their storage unit?
Probably not. Well, you know what would happen. In order to pay a third-party moving company to move my belongings, they'll want to verify its physical condition so I can't make breakage claims against them.
They're going to want to unpack everything and then repack it themselves and then move it to a different facility.
Or I could do what the government does and move it myself and have them pay me to move it.
But then that completely precludes your storage thing. Like the whole idea that it's going to be in storage for a year. Like if you move it yourself and you put everything in a storage unit in Louisiana and then decide that you're going to move it to Seattle in a year, like that's just not good for anybody.
Yeah, then we'd have to come back here, load up a truck, and move it to Seattle. It's all fine. Here's why it's fine. Because when we move out of this house, I stop paying rent.
Yeah, so that's going to make up the difference. For,
more than make up the difference of the storage costs.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Like this is a huge. Like I get the cost savings.
All of that's just details. What's driving it is the fact that my granddaughter is about to celebrate her first birthday, and my wife's only seen her twice.
So, yeah, so your spouse has decided that she's going to live in Salt Lake City or Utah or wherever that is, and that's it. That's the end of that discussion. What, you're going to go off and gallivant across the world to presumably save freedom or whatever it is that you're going to be doing, but she just wants to move back and see family.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things. The schools in Louisiana are kind of poor compared to Utah. You should have seen my kids when they register for classes. They're like, Dad, have you seen this list of classes? I can't believe some of the things they teach at this school.
Good or bad?
Good. Like, just good. Cultured and high. And my kids are engaged and interested and excited about the move. They'll be sad to leave their friends behind, and there's all the chaos of that transformation, blah, 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 blah. That always happens. So we're putting all our stuff in storage. My wife's leaving without me. I'll go to Kuwait. I'll come back here, find somebody to live with for a few months, and then go join them out there and start our new life.
I'm weighing in my mind the cost savings of not renting a house for the interim period against the enormous, unquantifiable pain in the butt that you are accepting by having to just juggle all of this stuff.
You're right that the weighted average of that seems nearly even if it wasn't for the intangibles kind of putting its finger on the scales.
Which intangible is that?
My 3 older kids all live out in proximity to my parents' house.
Okay, so it just gets you closer to everyone you care about.
Right.
Yeah, that's still a pain. Like, have fun with all of that.
We've liked living in Louisiana for 2 years. Okay, so there's another aspect to this I want to talk about, and that's the work aspect. You probably understand this. From a professional perspective, like, the next time a new project comes, I have to not take it on.
That's not true. That's absolutely not true. You can take on everything as if you
disabuse me of this.
The Air Force is built in such a way that you're just a cog in the machine. And you know that you're going to have a backfill that shows up to take over all of your duties. And there is absolutely nothing. I guarantee there is not a single thing that you can pick up right now that if the ball got dropped, the world would end. Like, cataclysmic things would not happen if Ben Rich got hit by a truck tomorrow. The world just goes on like, oh, what was he working on? Okay, you take care of this, and we'll cover it. Yeah, there's going to be a minute where they're trying to figure out where you were, but nobody cares. Nobody cares.
I agree with what you're saying. That's not the point I'm making. Okay. I don't think I'm indispensable. I think we've talked about this on the podcast before. It's like getting out of a pool. It closes in behind you, and you can never tell you were there.
Yep.
Like, I understand all that. The thing is, I need to balance my workload with the things I'm doing, my deployment, preparation, packing, those kinds of things. And if I just let my usual workload eat up all my time, then I don't have any time for that other stuff.
I see. You're having the opposite problem that I was thinking of. You are worried that you're going to keep working without stopping.
Right.
Do you know what I did when I found out that I was going to separate from the Air Force, and I had a couple of months before that happened? I started laughing at everyone that tried to task me. It's like, hey, can you take care of this? I'm like, I would, but wouldn't you know it? Shoot, I'm not going to be here to see it finish, so it's probably better to give it to somebody else.
Okay, that's kind of how I said it. It happened once this week. They're doing one of those things that they do every 5 years where they're reevaluating everyone's job descriptions or something. They sent down this big tasker, and 3 people are like, so when are we meeting to talk about this? I'm like, yeah, I'm not coming to that.
It's like, ooh, yeah, have fun with that. I won't be here for any of it.
Yeah, not happening. But I still care, and I want to see these things through, and I want to see them be successful, but I'm also realistic about the stuff that I care about that's going to get dropped as soon as I leave.
Nope. Stop caring.
I'm not getting a backfill.
Stop caring. Then you absolutely should stop caring. Like, then it is... All right, if you're not getting a backfill, if nobody's coming in to replace you before you leave, then it behooves you to get rid of every scrap of work that you have. Like, if you come in...
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm saying. The next project that comes down, I can't go to the meeting for it. I need to find who is going to go to that meeting for it.
No, you don't need to find anybody. You just kick that back to whoever sent the email. It's like, hey, you sent this to the wrong person.
Yeah, I'm definitely not doing that. It's something in the middle. There's the last part, which is like with your free time, usually you try to do things that you find relaxing, rejuvenating, those kinds of things. But then when all your free time gets eaten up by all these extra chores that will go away soon, but are right now omnipresent. You don't get a lot of that. You know this from tax season. Like, you had a pile up list of things, and you didn't get that time.
Well, and it's just, you called it the honeydew list, and it's less. It's less and more than that. If that's just one little piece of the list of things that you are responsible for, and then all you can do is prioritize them in like the must be dones, the would be nice to be dones, and the stuff that I would like to do, and you just work your way down the priority list based on the time that you have.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be nice if any time I had to make a transition, you could just work like you always do right up until the time that you have to make the transition, and then you cram all the transition tasks into 1 or 2 days, and then you go and do the new thing.
I'm over here just flabbergasted that you still haven't accepted the fact that nobody cares. Like, the entire organization of the Air Force does not care that you are leaving, and you are still trying to justify, like, I need to make sure that all of my responsibilities are taken care of because that's just who I am. Like, nobody cares but you. But, like, I don't know, is that an integrity thing? Is that just a good personality trait? Because, dude, just start slacking off right now. You're untouchable. There's nothing they can do to you, and nobody cares. You are the only person that cares whether or not your work gets done.
Yeah. I think it's funny how everything that's happening home and everything that happened in work are completely different and yet exactly the same. Like, for instance, at some point I need to pack up all of my Magic stuff, but in the meantime I still want to keep playing Magic. So I can do it in a way where I pack up the stuff I'm least likely to need and just keep out the last few things that I know I'll need. But maybe there'll be a change in the format and I'll need a sideboard card and I'll be like, I already packed up all my commons and uncommons and I'd have to unpack a box to get to them.
Oh, Ben, like, you struck a chord because this just started happening to me again. Like, I'm just now getting back into my local game store scene and I'm going there and I'm doing things. All right, so my son had a pre-built commander deck. I had a pre-built commander deck, and we had 2 deck boxes. That was it. That's all we needed. He had a deck box. I had a deck box. That's it. But then I really wanted to build this new commander that came out because it's my tribe. It's Mir, and Ben, I'm smashing people with it. It's so great. And so now I have 2 deck boxes, and then he saw there was new precons that were released, and one of them was the dragons with Dragon Lord of Tarka, and boy, he really liked that, so I got that for him because I'm a nice guy. So he had 2 deck boxes. I'm like, well, you know what? I've got this old gym bag that I used to carry my Magic stuff around in. It's the same gym bag I've had since 2005 that I used for Magic stuff, and so we put the 4 deck boxes into this gym bag. Okay?
Yep.
But then
this is the way collections start.
Then we went to the pre-release, and we each got pre-release packs, and so we have all of these commons and uncommons that we need to do something with. It's like, oh, well, you know what? I have these fat pack boxes that I've had in the top of my closet forever. Let me bust those out. Oh crap, those are actually full of cards. I don't have any place to put any of these extra things. Hey.
So you just described 2 generations of outgrowing your storage system.
Well, all right. So this is another milestone happened just the other day. Is I realized that with the pre-release and all the promos and stuff that we're getting, I have a bunch of rares sitting around, and I really should separate these out. And so I built a trade binder for the first time in 20 years, Ben. So I have a 3-ring binder with the plastic sheets and all the rares and stuff in it, and it's growing. And there's crap that's in my house now. And I was looking on Amazon for those giant 3,000 cardboard boxes. I'm like, oh no, it's happening again.
Yep. And then you do the thing where you're like, oh, I need to make this change in my deck, and I have that card. Oh crap, where did I put it again?
I'm trying not to do that because I don't play standard or anything. I'm not in any of these tournaments. And Nicole even said when I was looking at those boxes, like, do we really need more of those boxes? I'm like, no. I'm just looking. We're actually not getting any more cards. This is not a thing that is happening.
You're in denial.
I'm trying.
You said I'm in denial. You're in denial too.
I'm trying to be because I'm trying to reassure her. No, I am not falling back down this rabbit hole the way that I was because she's watching me as if I'm a recovered junkie because she knows how bad it was at the height of it.
All right. Well, listeners, if this is boring you, our apologies. However, if you're intrigued by the economics of Magic the Gathering, you are in luck. By the time episode 97 comes out, we will have published another bonus episode that's available only to our Patreons on Patreon. Patreon.com slash patrons on Patreon.com slash bad at magic.
That's really hard to do.
It is. Thank you to our current patrons, and if you'd like to become a patron, there's no minimum contribution required. We have 7 or 8 hours of bonus content that's available only to our patrons. All you got to do is go and sign up to be a patron, and it's all available to you, and you can listen to all of it there.
I will say the amount of bonus content we release is directly proportional to the amount of patrons we have. So the more patrons we have, the more encouraged we will be to make bonus content.
Yeah. Now, Josh, I want to kind of take a somber tone here because I kind of had an emotional 2 weeks since the last time we recorded, since episode 96.
Ben, every time you're an emotional guy. Every time I talk to you, something has moved you in some way because you just let the universe move you like that.
Yeah, well, this one was kind of close to home. So I generally go to my local game store twice a week, on Tuesday nights to play Modern and on Friday nights to play Standard or Pioneer or whatever the latest draft or pre-release format is. And this 2 weeks ago, Tuesday, we went to the store, and a friend I have there who also happens to be in the Air Force said, "Ben, have you seen Jason?" And I said, "No." He said, "His first sergeant called me. They're looking for him. He's AWOL today." I'm like, ooh, that's not good. I know he's been struggling recently with a divorce and with some problems that he's been having. I know he's lost some weight, and he kind of stopped playing Magic, which is a bad sign. You know, he came to play Magic and spent time with us at the store. He was happy, and we would always laugh and have a good time when we were playing. I always loved playing with him. He had a lot of character. Like, for instance, when you would sit down to play with him, typically in a match of Magic, what you'll do to pick who gets to go first is you'll roll a couple of dice and see whoever gets the high roll, and that person goes first. But Jason didn't like how that would sometimes resort in ties, so he would carry around these 3 cards from the first unset that were Rock Lobster, Paper Tiger, and I forget what the third one is.
Scissor Lizard.
Scissor Lizard. And he would have those in identical sleeves, and he'd lay them down, and you would each pick one up, and it would result in a rock, paper, scissors showdown, and whoever won the rock, paper, scissors got to choose who goes first. Whenever he would play, he'd carry around this big bag full of mini figurines that were like superheroes and stuff like that, and he would dump it out on the table, and it would clatter all over the place and make a big mess. But then during the match, when we needed counters or tokens or stuff, he'd grab them out of this pile, and it was always just fun to play with him. We had epic matches. They were always the good-natured, fun kind, where you give each other benefit of the doubt, remind each other of missed triggers, those kinds of things. So about 6 months ago, he'd been going through a messy divorce. His wife was taking the kids. He was having problems at work, and he'd stopped coming to Magic. And this last Tuesday night, when we found out that he was AWOL, which is military speak for absent without leave, which is the kind of thing you can go to jail for, which is really serious. One of the guys in the store who'd been living with him in his house said, "Last night he gave me his Magic Online password."
Like, to log in and check it out and play sometimes, or is in like, this is yours now?
Like, it sounded like this is yours now.
That's a red flag.
Yeah, huge red flag. So I picked up my phone and I sent him a message be like, "Hey buddy, I heard you got orders to Alaska. Let's get together for dinner. I'll take you out to dinner wherever you want to go before you go. Love to hear from you, Ben." And I sent it. And my friend that had told me about it and known about it, we said a prayer together, and then we played through the night worth of Magic, and then we kind of got back together, and he's like, "Hey, I just heard his first sergeant found him. He's all right." I'm like, "Oh, whew, what a relief. Okay, man, I hope he's okay," and I let it go out of my mind. The next day, I got a call from the same friend, and he said they found him this morning hung by the neck from the tree in his yard.
So just, yeah, the red flags were...
The red flags were red flags.
Okay.
I don't know if I had, after I sent him the text message and he didn't answer, if I'd gone over to his house.
No, don't. Already, I already want to stop you. I know what you're doing. I
sent him a message 8 hours before he died.
You are trying to take responsibility for this. This was not... No. This was not your fault. There was... How many people were already looking for him? How many people were trying to actually talk to him? You even said, like, he's a friend that you saw twice a week. This is not somebody that's in, like, your immediate inner circle. This is not somebody that was throwing red flags at you All the red flags that you got were secondhand, like stories from somebody.
I appreciate what you're doing right now. I know you have been in a position before where you were dealing with someone that was suicidal, and you took personal responsibility for trying to make sure that that person was okay.
The instance that you're talking about is that person came to me and started saying those things. And then, yes, because I had, we commonly call this choke on. Like, he was close enough for me to choke him to death. So, like, because I had choke on, like, I took personal responsibility for the situation. Yes, this is entirely different, and you should know that. Like you said, like his first sergeant was looking for him. The mechanisms that are in place to take care of people that are at risk was already working to try to protect him.
I understand why what you just said feels like it should be sufficient to absolve me of guilt, but it doesn't completely. I don't think it should. I think in a moment, like when you hear that someone that you know loves to play Magic the Gathering has given away their Magic the Gathering online collection with any value that has, and you know that that means he's probably thinking of hurting himself, that's the moment when you have to decide maybe to break down a few social barriers that you normally adhere to.
Have you talked to this guy's first sergeant?
I have.
And were they aware that he was struggling before he went AWOL?
They were.
Okay, so here's the thing. On one hand, you have, yes, you heard secondhand a red flag that he had given away his Magic Online account, which is, yeah, that's bad, and that's a big indicator. But at the same time, on the other hand, why aren't you putting equal weight on the fact that people that are, who's, like his first sergeant, that's their job, to manage and monitor the mental health of their people. Like because they were aware and because you knew from the same source, presumably, that he was being looked for by this person, why aren't those equally weighted? That like both that, yes, he was struggling, but there was also the safety net that is built specifically for this kind of thing was already engaging.
Yes. Do you think my culpability in this is 0%? Like actual zero?
I think your culpability is low enough that it shouldn't break your threshold for personal responsibility. It's the same way that, like, am I personally responsible for global warming? Yes, of course I am, but not in a statistically significant enough way for me to feel bad about it.
I agree with you that my culpability here was negligible. We were acquaintances that shared, a vocation. I still feel like there was a moment there where maybe I could have been the one that made the difference. And if nothing else, I want to think that this can help me recognize this moment if it ever comes along again, and maybe I could be the one that saves somebody.
I mean, there's also a parallel universe where you're the president of the United States and prevented the war in Ukraine. Like, how many what-if scenarios are you going to, like, carry around guilt for?
Have you ever known anybody that's committed suicide?
Yes.
About a decade ago, my cousin committed suicide. He was living in Belgium in the time, and I was living in England. I was his nearest, geographically, his closest living relative. But he'd made some decisions that had alienated him from his immediate family and me as well. Very similar situation. The laws in Belgium heavily favor the mother, probably justifiably so. His marriage broke up. She denied him access to the children. He felt hopeless and hung himself. This past weekend, after I'd found out about Jason, my magic buddy, I found out that one of my former seminary students that I taught about 5 years ago, when I taught him when he was 17, he's 22 now. I think he committed suicide. I'm not sure. It's the kind of thing where everyone on social media that knows has clammed up and has degenerated into social platitudes that don't give any detail.
So this is new information. This is something you found out about, like, after
within 48 hours of the other information. So I had
tell me you're not accepting any culpability in that. A person that you haven't seen.
Well, let me talk about the different kind of culpability for that. It's the idea that I am taking a group of 15 to 18-year-olds, and I'm teaching them about the kind of values I think that have the power to help them withstand the storms of life. How to cope with difficult things, how to get through problems as they arise, those kinds of things. And I know I can't save them all, but I'd like to think that the kind of things I'm teaching them, the skills I'm giving them, the faith I'm trying to help build in them will help them so that this isn't the outcome.
How many?
Again, a non-zero culpability in it.
How many seminary students have you had in your teaching career?
70.
Okay, so then this would be the tail end of a bell curve.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah,
I guess long enough, if I teach long enough, I'm going to have enough students that by a percentage of the population, one of them will be president and one will commit suicide.
At least, yes. And that's not your fault. And that's, you have some influence on their lives, but not to the level that you should feel personal responsibility for their decisions, especially years after the fact. Did you do your best? I know you did. You did your best teaching this kid when he was, for the hour a day that he was under your supervision.
Yeah, this is very different than Jason, where I texted him within eight hours of him dying.
So, but do you feel bad about the seminary student?
No, but it all just okay. So these things all just kind of weighed on my psyche within a very short period of time, where I was actually just feeling kind of like, what difference do I even make in the world?
What do you mean, what difference do you make in the world?
These aren't logical thoughts. These are the kinds of things that happen in a human emotional factory when a lot of things like this happen in close succession.
This is why I'm struggling. This is all feels stuff. This is all emotional stuff. And I'm over here doing the weighted averages. Like, why do you feel bad? Why do you have feelings at all? Like that, like feelings don't seem worth it.
So I was sitting there on Thursday night a week ago, and I was staring at the screen trying to prepare my seminary lesson for the next day, and I picked up my phone and I texted my seminary supervisor, and I'm like, I don't think I can teach tomorrow.
Why would you tell him that? What made you feel like that you couldn't teach an impartial lesson?
Because I felt like I couldn't, because one, I was just tired and beat down and just feeling like every little thing was going to be the thing that I just was going to be too much. And I don't know what that looks like, but just there was just a lot going on, and I couldn't handle it all. And this was just one more thing. I'd get up in the next morning and I'd look at a group of kids and look out at them and imagine that one of them's going to kill themselves in 5 years. And what do I say to them now to keep that from happening? Again, these are not logical thoughts. This is just what was happening.
Right, I do get that. This is you're saying this stuff, and it makes me want to get up and give you a hug. Not necessarily because I want to give you a hug, but because it sounds like you need a hug.
Yeah. So my seminary supervisor was rightfully concerned about me and said, "Listen, cancel seminary tomorrow, take the day off, and let me know how you're doing."
But then get back to your unpaid job the next day.
So I did. The other teacher took my class. He came and picked up my kids, so I didn't even have to wake up early. And I just felt a lot better. And I appreciated him doing that for me. And then one of my other friends came and checked on me. And I don't know, I got back above the emotional, like, ineffectiveness line, and then I was okay.
Right. Yeah, I get it. You were just dragged down into your feels, and that's a thing about, like, when you have strong emotions, you want to continue to feel whatever the strong emotion that you're having is, and it turns into this weird cycle. When you're mad, you want to stay mad. When you're sad, you want to stay sad, and your brain goes into these loops trying to keep you in that same state.
That's very well said, and that's kind of how it felt. It almost felt like I'd be disrespecting the memory of the boy and my friend if I just moved on and said it doesn't matter. I bear 0% culpability in that matter. They were going to do it anyway. I guess that's just the way things are.
Well, what?
I felt an obligation to be sad.
I felt an obligation to be sad. So, I struggle with that concept sometimes, because I remember the last funeral that I was at, and I won't say who it was for because I'm not going to. But I remember sitting there and not feeling anything. And not in a way that's like you're numb or like it's too emotionally overwhelming, but in a way that, like, yeah, I understand what happened, and it's just not impacting me on a scale that on the same way that it's impacting other people that are in this room. And then I started thinking, like, should I feel bad about that? Like, should that be worrying to me? Like, that I don't feel bad? Like, should I feel bad that I don't feel bad? But at the end, I didn't. But I've justified it to myself, but that just, I don't know. I guess that kind of just illustrates like how we're on different like levels of emotional intelligence or emotional awareness, I guess. I don't know. Because these, like, death doesn't impact me the way that it's impacting you.
Did you feel like you should, but you didn't, and you were just trying to account for the discrepancy?
I felt like I'm at a funeral for a person that I should feel bad about. Like, I should feel bad that they are gone, but I don't. And then I started, like, taking the mental stock of why don't I feel the way that I feel. And
is part of that just your perspective on the nature of life and death?
I mean, maybe it's just my perspective. Maybe it's I'm so callous that this person wasn't directly like influencing my existence closely enough that it bothered me.
Yeah.
But if somebody close to me died, like, yeah, that would impact me tremendously. But I guess, was this person too far away from my inner sphere? I don't know. I don't know. I guess everybody just handles it differently, right?
There was a time where I wondered if I died, if anyone would think to tell you. But I don't think that anymore. I think now if I died, that people would definitely know to tell you.
Well, you probably have like 700 friends out in the world somewhere, and like there's a big list. Like, you're gonna have to make a list. Like, if I die, here are the people that you need to send a text message to. Like, if I died, there would be less than, I'm going to say 20 people that would really care.
Yeah, well, I would unambiguously mourn you, Josh.
Aw. Then if you died, I'd mourn you too.
Okay.
That's a weird way to end that segment. Are you feeling okay now, buddy? Like,
yes.
Like we were
Thank
talking
you.
about, like, this impacts people differently, and it sounded like you had a rough time. Like, have you gotten over this? Like, it's ridiculous that you feel any amount of culpability for it, but like beyond that, like, are you okay?
There's one last iron in the fire that I want to talk about, and that is that my friend who knew about it, who was talking to the first sergeant, said, hey, the unit's looking for somebody to conduct what's called a dignified transfer, but it has to be someone that outranks the member, and I can't do it, and they're looking for somebody to do it. I said, tell them I'd be willing to do that.
I don't know what a dignified transfer is.
Okay, there's a movie out there that was made by Kevin Bacon, of all people, called Taking Chance. And it's a great movie. I recommend it. It starts off with him as a staff officer at the Pentagon who looks at the statistics of the war that's happening in the Middle East. And whenever a Marine dies, he has to find a backfill for them so that he can send them over to theater and pick up their job. And he's gotten to the point where his conduct is just to look at these numbers on a computer screen and think of them as just math.
Right. Well, you have
this number went down by 1. I need to make it go back up by 1.
You have to dissociate at that level, or else you'll just be crushed by the emotional impact of all these people dying.
Yes, but that's not the point of this particular film. It was an HBO film or something like that. I don't even know where it's available. I'll link in the show notes. But at one point, he realizes he's become so disconnected that he doesn't care about that these numbers represent real humans' lives. And so they come up with a duty, and they say, we need someone to conduct a dignified transfer for this Marine that no one's accounted for, and he volunteers to do it. And the whole movie is the detailed step-by-step conduct of him carrying out this dignified transfer, which means that he goes to the mortuary affairs station in Dover Air Force Base, Delaware.
Oh, got it. This is the accounting for the actual corpse and bringing it back.
Yes.
Okay.
He dresses up in his best uniform. He carries the person's last, personal effects, and he accompanies the body to its place of final resting.
Okay.
And that's what I would be doing if his unit asks me to. I don't think they're going to, but I exchanged a message with the first sergeant a little while ago, and they might ask me to do it. And if I do, I'll get plane tickets to Wyoming and conduct the dignified transfer.
There'll be some closure for you. It sounds like you need that closure.
Yeah, I would definitely feel good about doing that if they ask me to do it. But if they don't, I'm feeling better now.
You do a little moment of silence or something at the next Friday Night Magic for him.
So we did something a couple nights later where the 4 of us that were closest to him went to the Magic store, and we all just played a multiplayer game together in his honor, and we bought a pack and cracked it for him, pretended it was him, and looked at the rares and threw it out.
Oh,
like pouring one out.
You poured one out for your homies?
Yeah, but in Magic.
Well, unless it was, like Shield of the Apocalypse foil Phyrexian version. In
No,
which case
this was a flip it and rip it or whatever. All right, Josh, I want to do a bad etiquette segment. This is a weird one. This is one that's just come up in my life, maybe because I'm getting old and fat, but I realize I can close my eyes right now and think of all the places within 20 miles of me where there's a candy dish.
What do you mean a candy dish?
Just what you think when you think of candy dish, where there is some type of bowl or jug or jar or something that holds candy in it. And I want to talk about the societal etiquette surrounding those.
All right. I had a candy dish in my office when I worked in the office at the accounting firm that I worked for.
Awesome. Who put it there? Did you put it there?
My wife gave it to me. Like, here,
okay.
She gave me many things. Like, this is one of them. This is for your office. And here's the thing, Ben. It was full of candy that I don't eat and I don't like. And so I put this candy dish in my office, and turns out some of my coworkers liked the candy that was in there. And so they would come in and they would grab candy until it was empty. And then I asked my wife, I need more candy for my candy dish. And then she bought more candy I don't like.
This is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted to talk about. So you have this candy dish. When your wife got you the candy dish, who were you imagining that would eat the candy?
She was imagining that I would eat the candy.
Oh, it was for you. What about customers? Is this what it wasn't for, like, customers that come into the office?
I'm an accountant, man. Like, we don't get a lot of people that come in to talk to me every day. Like, there is a person that we hired specifically so I don't have to talk to people.
So this was supposed to sit on your desk and just be for you to eat?
I think that was the intention of it, yes.
Okay, but I like the idea of buying candy that you don't like in it, because then it just sits there and you don't just eat it and get fat.
It was like a nice thing that she did for me in a mean way.
Okay, so for a candy dish that you got and put on your desk, maybe part of it is for customers, maybe part of it's for coworkers, maybe part of it's for you. Are any of those not an intended group that's meant to consume it?
Oh, is there people that are excluded from the candy? Like,
yes.
Stop eating my candy. That's not for you.
Right.
Oh, so that's what you're talking about, the candy dish. Like, if you have a dish
the etiquette of a candy dish.
Then it's just, this is the world's candy. This is the public's candy. Anybody can just walking off the street.
But unlike trick or treat that only happens once a year, when people do that thing where they don't want to answer the door, so they put a bowl out on the porch and says, please take one. What is the ethics or the etiquette for how much candy you can reasonably take out of someone's candy dish?
Oh, you're pushing the, like, take a penny, leave a penny trays back when, like, hard currency was a thing.
What's the etiquette of a candy dish?
I just saw a video on the internet the other day about this that I thought was hilarious. Like, so are the napkins free? Yes, the napkins are free, however many napkins you need. So if I wanted like 800 napkins, I could just take those and leave. Like, well, you should take as many napkins as you need for the meal that you're eating here. It's like, but I'm not buying a meal. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to take as many napkins as you tell me are free, and I'm going to leave.
Yes, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So that's a great example of demonstrating that we have a limit. And you can see it by pushing all the way to the far end and being like, well, obviously you can't take that many napkins. So how many can you take?
So clearly there's an upper bound. Where is the upper bound? I will take that N-1 napkins every day that I come in here.
So let's constrain the discussion to candy and a candy dish. We can talk about napkins or ketchup packets or whatever, but let's talk about candy and a candy dish. So
I think the implicit use of a candy dish is that occasionally, which is something else we have to define, you would come in and partake of candy that you would imbibe presumably at that moment. Like, if I'm imagining a candy dish, somebody's going to take a piece of candy and they're not allowed to walk away from it unless that candy is in their mouth.
Okay, good. So they can't just stick it in their pocket.
Yeah, because that's weird. Like, you walk up, even if you took one piece of candy, put it in your pocket, and then walked away, I would look at you funny and be like, that's weird. Why did you take that candy? Would you take it for later? Then just come in later.
Could they take one and put it in their mouth while they're talking to you and then pick one up as they're leaving?
All right, so this is going to be stupid, but maybe it's the type of candy. Because if it's like a mint, if it's like a peppermint or something, it makes sense to take one like before you go out to eat for lunch or something. So that would make sense if you were to take one now, but not necessarily eat it right away. But if it's going to be like a Jolly Rancher, no. Like, if you're going to take a Jolly Rancher, you need to eat it within like 1 minute of you grabbing it.
Okay, so it depends on what it is. What if it's chocolate?
Who puts chocolate in a candy dish?
I ask this because I have a candy dish in my circle of candy dishes that has chocolate in it.
That's a weird candy dish. Is it air conditioned all the time? Like, I would never be comfortable putting chocolate in a candy dish.
Hashtag Arizona problems.
Because you would reach in and just pull out one big giant blob of half melted chocolate.
Yeah. Okay, so let me tell you about the candy dishes in my life. There's like 6 I can think of right now. One is at the office where I go for physical therapy right now for the recovery from my
your shoulder surgery. Yeah.
Yeah, and I go there like 3 days a week. I assume it's within our society's etiquette that I could take one. It's in the waiting area near the secretary's desk where she can like see it when you take one out of it. And sometimes we make eye contact, and I don't know if I'm violating her norms or not. Can I take one every time I go to the office?
What kind of candy is in the dish?
There's like there's chocolates, and it changes sometimes. Sometimes she has my favorite, and this is when it's really a problem. When somebody buys one of those big like Halloween trick-or-treat bags of Tootsie Rolls that have all kinds of assorted Tootsie Rolls in it, it has the fruit-flavored ones, and along with the fruit-flavored ones are the vanilla-flavored ones that are in the blue wrappers. Oh my gosh, I freaking love those. Like
vanilla Tootsie Rolls are your favorite Tootsie Rolls. Candy? And you're the weirdest person I know.
And if I see those in the dish, I want every single one right now. I want them all.
But you've only ever taken one at a time.
No, I've taken more than one at a time, but I'll pretend I'm only taking one and I'll like grab 3.
Okay, well, here's what you need to do next time. You need to walk in there. You need to make eye contact with the person. And without breaking eye contact, take a full handful. Just scoop out a giant handful of candy and put it in your pocket. And see
Hashtag social experiment.
And see what she does.
This is why this was a video on the internet. How many napkins can I take? 1, 2, 3, 4. Are you going to stop me? You going to stop me?
Yeah, but just don't ask that question. Just put that. It's a social contract, right? You're putting these out here. Yes. These are for customers. Yes. These are free. Yes. And then just dump the whole dish in your pocket and walk away and see what happens.
Right. So somewhere between the whole dish and 1 or 2 is the number where maybe there's even a gray area. Like if I take 1 completely within expectations, doesn't even raise an alarm. If I take 5, maybe she thinks that was rude, but she's not going to say anything.
Well, this is the
if
thing.
I take 10, then she might say, "Hey, sir, only 1 per customer."
Up until this point, we've been talking about it as if it's a hard limit. It's not. It's a graph. It's a graph of frustration of the person who is putting out the candy dish over the number of pieces of candy that you get until you reach a threshold where they're going to say something.
Yeah. Do you owe someone compensation? Like, let's say it's a coworker and every day you come in and whenever you go to their desk, you take one. Like, should you once a year be like, "Hey, it's my turn to refill the candy dish"?
Okay, so I'm a jerk. And when my coworkers had exhausted the candy in my candy dish, one of them came in like, "Oh, you're out of the Jolly Ranchers." I'm like, "I don't refill it. I don't eat the Jolly Ranchers. So presumably you ate all the Jolly Ranchers?" "Oh, I guess." And I said, "Well, if you want more Jolly Ranchers, you're probably going to have to buy some and put them back in the candy dish."
Wow.
And they thought that was just so ridiculous that I would ask them to do that. They ended up doing it, but they gave me crap for like, "I can't believe you made me refill your candy dish." I'm like, I have not eaten a piece of candy out of that dish the entire time it has been in my office.
Okay, well, one way you could approach that is just okay, this is a nice thing that I'm doing for someone else. Like, it just greases that lubricates the interactions of our social relationships. So there's one candy dish I pass every day that's in an area that's unsupervised.
Unsupervised candy dish.
Unsupervised candy dish.
Okay, how many candies are in the... Like, when we're talking about a dish, are we talking about like a little plate, or are we talking about like a big bowl?
Like a cereal bowl sized bowl.
Okay. Like a cereal bowl sized bowl of free unsupervised candy.
Yes.
So every time you walk past it, it's empty.
No, it always has candy in it, but they're dum-dum lollipops, which are not the kind of thing that you can like walk around in your mouth with if you're in the military. So they resist people taking them. But occasionally someone will dump like half a bag of like wrapped like Milky Way and Snickers chocolates, and those only last like half a day. I've never seen someone taking them. No one's ever seen me taking them, but they just disappear.
Well, yeah, if you put name brand chocolate in a dish that's unsupervised, they're going to vanish. The first person that walks by is going to go, "Ooh, free candy," and take all the chocolate and leave all the dum-dums.
Yeah, so I think there's multiple levers influencing this thing. One is like the level of scrutiny and supervision you have over it.
Oh, absolutely.
2 is like the social context in which it's encountered. Like a coworker's desk is very different than the doctor's office waiting area.
Which is also different from somebody offering you a dish and saying, like, would you like a piece of candy or would you like some candy?
Yes.
Like, those two verbiages would change how much candy that somebody would take.
Yeah. In fact, I've even had somebody do that to me where I'll, like, take one and they go, oh, no, take more.
Well, then you should say take a lot of candy, not take
I'll just eat them
candy.
myself anyway. Isn't it funny how we use socially in deliberately not specific numbers? Like, take 5. Take some.
For somebody like me, no, it's not funny. It's infuriating. Say what you mean.
All right, listeners, if you have opinions on this, let's hear them. You can go to our subreddit, and we'll have the open thread for this episode, and you can weigh in on the discussion. What do you think about candy dishes?
I'm still baffled that there are 6 candy dishes like in your immediate vicinity.
That's not it. It's my doctor's office. It's the waiting area in front of the A1 conference room. It's the back in the vault.
Don't list them. I know of one candy dish, and it's mine. Like, the fact that you're keeping track of more than one is crazy.
All right, but you're going to illustrate the Bader-Meinhof principle in this following week, Josh, and I guarantee between now and the next time we record Bad at Magic, you will see 5 more candy dishes.
All right, well, that's a social experiment, like, to be continued, because, Ben, I work from home. I don't go to a lot of places, so we'll see.
All right, Josh, we need to do a quick Bad at Technology. So I had an experience this week where there's a social interaction that happens in the military, and that is whenever somebody leaves, it's considered, it's expected almost that you buy them some kind of formal going-away gift.
I didn't get a going-away gift when I left the military.
Well, one level above that is actual retirement. I have a senior an NCO that works for me that's getting ready to retire from the Air Force. We need to get him a gift. But the thing is, that's not in the budget. It's the kind of thing that relies on this soft, squishy, non-specific social structure to take care of.
All the officers, come here. Everybody fork out some money. We need to buy what's-his-face a retirement gift.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. And it really tiptoes along the lines of what's acceptable per the laws and regulations as opposed to what the traditions and rules are.
Culture eats rules for breakfast.
Yes. So this is an example where, like, okay, I'm his supervisor. I'm probably the person that's obligated to do it. So immediately I buy the thing. In this instance, it cost $160.
Yep.
I buy the thing out of pocket. I'm out that $160. Now, if anyone else likes him enough to contribute to money, it goes to me to recoup some of the costs of that. Now, I can't expect anyone to pay for it. I already have just given that $160 out of the goodness of my heart. But there's a script I can follow where I can say, hey, so-and-so's getting ready to leave. I bought their gift. If you'd like to contribute, I'm the one organizing that, which is a signal to everyone else to give me, how much money would you say?
It should be, if you're an officer, it's $20. Like that, right. At least. That's
the standard contribution.
Okay.
If all 5 of the other officers in my division contribute, that'd be $100, and I'd be out $60. If the enlisted guys all contribute $5 each, that's another $40, and then my contribution would have been $20, and everyone else's contribution would have been the rest.
I challenge you to email these 5 individuals with a copy of the receipt that you paid, and then an invoice for a 1/6 share of that price.
Okay, so here's what I didn't realize. I walked into the office and I was holding the thing, and my chief saw me and said, "What's that?" I said, "Oh, it's the going away gift for so-and-so." And he goes, "Oh," and he stood up and got out a $20 out of his wallet and handed it to me. I wasn't intending to kick off this thing yet.
Yeah, the walking around actually getting the money.
Right, I wasn't ready. And then the commander pokes his head out of the office and he goes, "What's going on?" And I was standing there holding the thing in the $20 bill.
It's like, well, sir, I'm walking around recouping my expenses.
and I'm holding the thing, and he's like, "I don't have any cash. Can I get it to you later?" I'm like, "I take Venmo."
Oh, sir, this is the year 2022. I don't want or 2023. I don't want your cash.
I don't want filthy money. Could have germs on it. So he goes, "Okay, how do I do that?" And I pull up the Venmo app and hit the QR code, and I hold it out. I'm like, "Just scan this." And he looks at it suspiciously because he's the chief of cyberspace operations. And he goes, "How do I know that's not going to give me a virus?"
Seriously?
Yes.
Seriously?
Seriously. And I'm like, sir, it's just Venmo. And he goes, do you have security software on that phone? For a second, I thought he was joking. I didn't even know this was a thing. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And he's like, I have. And he named a product name that I'm not going to say again. And I'm like, that's a thing? Like you can have aftermarket security software on your mobile device?
And he is standing on the peak of Mount Stupid, thinking that he is impenetrable to all of this information attack when really this security software guaranteed was made in China is just harvesting all of his data.
All right, I'm going to put a poll on the subreddit. Do you have any form of aftermarket security software on your mobile device? Yes or no?
That blows my mind. Like I thought this was just a level of risk that everyone in society was accepting.
Do you, Josh?
No.
You have it?
Why would I have extra security stuff on my phone? I even have contactless payment on my phone. Like,
okay, you have a computer science degree and a whole career's worth of IT security.
Yep.
Help me understand your reason why you don't. Why does your mobile device get a pass?
I'll tell you right now. Like this is whenever you talk about security. Like I did how long was that? Like a 6-week internship at the NSA as part of my cybersecurity like degree that I got at the academy. I will tell you right now, 99% of security is opportunity cost. You don't have to be impenetrable. You have to be slightly more impenetrable than the guy next to you. Because for the attackers, it's a trade-off of time. It doesn't matter what the system is. It doesn't matter how good it is. It doesn't matter what the security is. They can trade time, and they will penetrate that system if they really want to. So The idea is just to make it, you just need to take 5 more seconds than somebody else because they'll give up on you and go to somebody else.
Well, what serves that function for mobile phones?
Nothing. Like, it's just the fact
what distinguishes you as easier or harder than the next guy?
Oh, for mobile phones, absolutely nothing. It's the idea that there's a ton of people that are completely clueless on how to use their mobile phone, that still answer the Nigerian prince email, that still respond to phishing scams that get sent to them out of the blue, that still respond to the auto dialers that call them and will actually give them all of their information. Those are the people that are making it pretty safe for me to go about my normal life, and because I'm not the target. There are way softer targets out there than me.
I hope you're right. I just hadn't considered up till that point, but when I actually thought it through, I thought I basically have assumed, maybe erroneously or maybe correctly, that the baseline security features of the product that are integrated into it are sufficient to, combined with my own personal risk management and decision making, to keep me safe.
Just awareness in general of the kinds of things that could happen to you. Like, here's an example. This is something that I do that I don't know if this is going to protect me or not, but whenever I go to fill up, we only have one car that runs on gas, and when I do go to fill it up, I grab like the card reader thing and the little QR code reader thing.
And yank on it?
And I yank on it, and I try to pull it and see if it'll come off.
Yeah, we've all seen those videos of like
the
fake
skimmers,
card skimmer that's on the outside of a gas pump or something. Yeah, those are scary.
Yeah. So like that's just one example of something that you can do in your life that takes 2 seconds that just makes you a little more safe from this kind of crap that's happening.
Okay, for Bad at Rhetoric, Josh, I want to talk about the types of oratory that you could give. In classical rhetoric, oratory was divided into 3 branches. They're called genera causorum, which mean the 3 kinds are judicial oratory, deliberative oratory, and epidietic oratory. Their purposes are, it's kind of like a matrix where there's a function of time and there's a function of what purpose you're trying to do. So for judicial oratory, if you think about it, it's like a lawyer giving a speech in a court. It's related to something that happened in the past, and you're speaking concerning justice.
Wait, hang on. You're talking about this is classic rhetoric. I get that, but what is? I don't understand. Like, these are the
what purpose does it serve? So, like, you and I right now, we're conducting oratory. It's not judicial oratory.
Well, I get what you're saying, but how does this help me in my life? Like knowing this, like categorizing the types of conversations that I have. What does that do for me?
Okay, so I had this come up this week where I was here's what had happened. I had some subordinates that were working on something where they were going to need to convince someone of it, and they were supposed to produce some PowerPoint slides that would go along with it. And so what they produced wasn't right. And I was like, why is this not right? It was because they didn't understand the purpose that it was serving and who the target audience was.
Okay, that's valid. But at the same time, that's not falling into one of your 3 oratory branches.
Yes, you're right. And there are more than these, arguably. These are the ones from classical rhetoric. The second one is deliberative. Think about like a speech on the House floor in the United States House of Representatives, where it's related to the future, and you're trying to exhort or dissuade people relating to a piece of legislation or some cause that you're advocating for, whether or not it's good or worthy or advantageous or disadvantageous.
Okay, so up until this point, I've enjoyed our Bad at Rhetoric, and like you've been educating me on like understanding on how to speak and like messages and conveying.
You're off the rhetoric bus now.
This one is the first time that you've talked about something that falls into this category where I'm trying to see how I could apply this and be a better orator, be better at rhetoric. But this feels purely academic. This feels like a tool that you would use to discuss the oration that somebody else gave.
Okay. Well, what you just said was an example of epidiotic oratory. That's relating to the present, and that's what our podcast is.
Wow. How did you sucker me into T-balling that up for you?
What are you reading right now, Josh?
All right, so I'm still reading the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. I'm in the 3rd book. It's called The Last Argument of Kings, which apparently is something that Louis XIV inscribed on all of the cannons of his navy. The Last Argument of Kings, which is, I mean, if you're going to put something on a cannon, that seems like something highbrow to do it with.
Yeah.
And what's funny about this is I complained last episode that Joe Abercrombie is taking his sweet time getting to the point of these stories. I was slogging through the 2nd book, which got a little better, but still there wasn't really a big payoff at the end.
Uh-huh.
And then the 3rd book starts and everybody just kind of they didn't forget about the events of the 2nd book, but it's almost oh, well, whatever. And then just pressed on with their life. But I will say this for him. I'm halfway through it and it's he's building up to a 3rd act. It's unfortunate that it took him 2 books to build up to a crescendo, but it's all coming together in a way that I have been very much enjoying up to this point. I just wish it had happened faster.
Okay. I like that. I was listening to another podcast and I heard the host talking about a television series, and they talked about how sometimes when people watch the first episode, they don't get it and they bail out. And they said that it gets good in the 4th episode and that you got to give it until then. And then if you don't like it, then it's not for you. And I thought that seems reasonable.
There are some shows that The Office is the classic example because they didn't hit their stride until the 2nd season. It took the writers a while to figure out how to best leverage the format that they were using.
Uh-huh.
There are other shows. A great example is House of Cards. If you haven't watched House of Cards, I recommend it because I
didn't make it all the way through. It got bad at the end.
But it gets, the longer it goes, the worse it gets. Watch the first season and then give up on it. But the first episode, I even saw behind the scenes things they were talking about. We wanted people to know if they were going to be into this show or not within the first 1 minute of watching this show. And they had this scene with Kevin Spacey. He was running on this. I'm going to spoil it. Spoilers for House of Cards.
The first minute of House of Cards.
The first minute of the first episode of House of Cards. He's jogging on the side of the road somewhere, and then a stray dog gets hit by a car. And he stops and he's leaning next to the dog and he tells the guy, "Oh, well, you have a phone? Call the vet." And the guy turns away to call the vet. And then Kevin Spacey looks at the camera and he says, "My daddy told me that suffering for no reason is pointless." And then he strangles the dog to death on the side of the road while the other guy is distracted.
Now you know everything you need to know about this senator.
About this character, yes. If that intrigues you, continue watching the show. If that is horrifying to you, then you need to switch channels.
This is not for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so that's how I feel, and I feel like there's a certain percentage. You can't say, "Oh, it doesn't really get good until season 6." No, you don't get to say that. If it's not good until season 6, it's not good ever.
Fair. I've told you multiple times that the Wheel of Time series is by far the best series of books that I've ever read. And I've not written the Wheel of Time. Read the Wheel of Time, but The first 2 books are good, but the third book, it gets like super awesome. But
yeah,
like
I couldn't even make it through the Fellowship of the Ring.
that's a lot to ask from somebody. It's like, oh, just read these 2 books knowing that the third one's great.
Yeah, I think I made it through 1 or 2. Okay, so I get what you're saying. I'm reading Generation Kill by Evan Wright. I've just started it. Listeners, if you're listening along, we will be discussing this in a future episode of the podcast. I gotta give a content warning. Evan Wright was a reporter who was embedded with a Marine recon unit that was about to invade Iraq in the Second Iraq War. And he censors nothing. And everything you can imagine that Marines say and do when they're about to go to war is happening and described in great detail. It's the most explicit content warning I can give.
If you don't know the kinds of things that Marines do before they go to war, just recognize that every Marine at the lowest level is trained to be a professional killer, and they have no qualms about it whatsoever.
Yeah, and they're also just kind of racist and crass and misogynistic and whatever, everything, all the istics.
Oorah.
Okay, so that's what I'm reading right now. Josh, I want to do a quick board game Survivor. Okay, this is going to take a little bit of build up. In the military, we have what's called an offsite. An offsite is a keyword that we give to what some people might call a boondoggle, or the British call it off on a jolly.
Oh yeah, we're taking the day off. We're gonna goof around some other place, not wearing our uniforms, and it's just gonna be fun.
Yes. Now there's a whole spectrum of these. Like, there's a good. Let me take it to Stephen R. Covey in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's really easy.
You don't have to quote like words and books every time you try to make a point. Just make a point, man.
It's really easy to live your life in the urgent, important part of the spectrum. And if you let yourself, sometimes you'll spend a lot of your life in the urgent, not important part of the prioritization matrix. But you do need to take time sometimes for the important, not urgent. And an offsite is a good way to do that.
Okay. Okay. I apologize for calling you out earlier. That was a good example. I appreciate that quote.
Thank you. So in the examples I've seen, the good examples of an offsite I've seen are where you basically take all the people in your office and you go somewhere else. You get away from your regular surroundings so that your phone isn't ringing, you're not getting emails, no one's walking in and asking you to do things, and you can just focus on whatever it is you're trying to do. There's several reasons you can do this. It could be for training. It could be for relationship building. It could be for planning. I've also found that we probably don't do this enough. Maybe you've been in units where they did it a lot and some where they barely did it ever. I think there's a whole spectrum here, but the middle ground is definitely the place you want to be.
I've in the military, yeah, I'm like... I'm trying to reconcile this in my brain because like it's very different in my civilian life than it has been in my military life. When I was in the military, everything was urgent, important all the time, forever. That's all anybody cared about. And that's
Didn't
because...
you guys ever do offsites?
I did one offsite in my entire 9 years that I was active duty.
Really?
Yes, just the one. And
you never had like a squadron golf tournament or something like that?
No. Because
you never went and did a ropes course?
Ben, like, this is something that, like, when I expressed this problem when I was flying drones, I was like,
yes, you're right. That was the important, urgent, all the time.
All the time, forever. And I expressed it to somebody, like, you all are so wrapped up in this urgent, important that you can't even take 2 seconds to breathe and think about the stuff that's going to be important tomorrow. Okay. And, I said that to a superior officer, and it blew their mind, like, oh my goodness, you're right. We're just so worried about day to day. I'm like, yeah, that's obvious. And if, never mind, I'm not going to go down that path.
So let's take that as a hypothetical, and we'll say my friend Jason's unit. Let's say his unit was so wrapped up in all the important, urgent things that they had to do that they didn't have any time to focus on the fact that this man was having personal crisis that exceeded his ability to cope.
Okay.
And if somebody had just taken a time out for a minute, like you did for your friend who came to you and said, I'm thinking about killing myself, and said, all right, let's forget about work for a minute and just take care of you.
Right.
So my boss, when he first got here, said, hey, guys, we could just get wrapped around our jobs and spend every day, all day, focus on the things we're doing and never get to know each other and not work very well as a team. Or occasionally we could get out of the office and go do something. What do you say? So I took him at his word, and I started planning activities.
Oh, jeez.
So and
he didn't plan any activities. You took it upon yourself to take what he said.
No, this is how it works when you're a commander. You tell what your intent is, and then you expect someone to take initiative. I'm fully within his intent here. He's not going to plan the activities. So I said, and when you plan the activity, you get to pick what happens. And he's shown that he supports it by, 1, protecting our time when we choose to do it, and 2, even contributing to the financial costs associated with it.
Okay.
So I said, hey, I'd like to go out and play disc golf in the park. So let's all take the afternoon off. We'll go to the park and we'll play disc golf. And I make it sufficiently organized. I set up a tournament. I pick holes for closest to pin, longest drive, get prizes, get drinks and plan it and everything. And everybody comes. We had a good time. So we did that like 2 weeks ago. It was the only time that we get everybody from all the different branches out and talking to each other, looking at each other face to face, building relationships. And then when we go to the office and we need to, ask somebody for a favor or talk to somebody that is in our normal immediate circle, you know who they are. You know their name, you've seen them, you've interacted with them, all that good stuff.
Why is that relevant? Like if it's within their scope of responsibility to do the thing you need them to do, why do you need to know who they are?
You're right, Josh. You could never do this and also function. These are intangibles. I don't know if it's right or wrong to never do them or always do them or only do them sometimes. I don't know. I think it helps. Do I know how much it helps? I don't know.
I think it helps people that aren't me. I think it helps people like you that like to know people and like to get to know people and like have that interpersonal relationship. I'm not that guy.
Okay, so I'm the branch chief of resources and plans for cyberspace operations in Air Force Global Strike Command. That means that I have just this big pile of work that slides down to me, that then I have a pool of action officers that work for me that I need to distribute it amongst. I know their skills and their abilities and their past and their concerns and their availability and all those kinds of things, and I tried to distribute it amongst them. But over time, it had gotten to the point where it was a little bit out of balance. Like, so-and-so had proven really good, and they'd gotten more things, and so-and-so not as good, and he didn't get enough things. And it was starting to be a source of stress within my team that works for me.
Okay.
And I kept trying to make little adjustments and fix it. I'm like, this isn't working. We need to, take a time out, everybody get in the same room, and talk this through.
Okay.
So I rented out the room in my game store that has, dragon heads on the walls.
Okay.
And I took my team all out of the office and we went in this room and we closed the door and I put up some slides and we talked about our strategic priorities. And then I put worksheets in front of them where on the first worksheet, they wrote what it is they do. And then on the second worksheets, they put all the projects I have assigned to them. And then we went around the room and we assigned numbers to those projects on a scale of 1 to 10, how difficult they are to accomplish.
Okay.
How much of your time this consumes. And then when we were all done, then everyone took the worksheets of the projects that belonged to them, totaled it up and wrote it on their one, and then we wrote them all up on the board so we could see by consensus.
Yeah, you just quantified who's doing the most work.
Yes, exactly. And then we said, okay, does this look fair to you guys? No. How do we fix it? Well, so-and-so needs to do more. Okay, what should they do? And then we talked and we moved the project around and said, all right, if they're going to do more, what training do they need to be able to be good at it? And then when we walked out of that room, we had all of the projects assigned in a more even way and a training plan for what everybody needed to do to get there. However, that only took about 2 hours and I took the whole afternoon off. So we had about 3 hours left and then we just played board games the whole time and it was awesome.
So all that was leading up to the board game Survivor.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the guys brought a game called Red Dragon Inn.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to it's not utilizing D&D properties, but it's supposed to call to mind Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
The conceit of the game is that you are a bunch of adventurers who've just come in from an adventure to a tavern, and now there's a sub-game that's going on. There's 2 parts to it. You're either trying to get everyone's money or get all the other people blackout drunk so that you're the last one standing.
So presumably you can steal their share of the loot.
Right. So in this game, there are little decks of cards that represent a character. You could be a halfling thief or an ogre warrior or whatever. And then all of the actions that you can take in this mini game are consistent with the personality of that character. Okay. And on your board in front of you, you have your deck that you're drawing your actions from, and then you have your stamina and your intoxication. And if they ever meet in the middle, then you're blackout drunk. And then you have your gold and you gamble, or there's things you can steal and those kinds of things. And if you ever run out of gold or get blackout drunk, you lose and you're out.
That's fantastic. I love this.
Now, this game, one of the things I love about it, it's the best example of an expansion pack to a game that expands the game without adding complexity.
Oh, because it's presumably you could add different kinds of characters with different decks of cards that do different actions, and it doesn't change the rules of the game. It just changes how that person plays it.
Yes. So if you buy just the core game, it's only 4 players, I think. But if you buy an expansion pack, it has another 4 players, and you can play with up to 8. Or you just have 4 more that you can choose from for however big of a group you do. And I think there's like 6 expansions of it. So there's all kinds of characters, and it does add to the depth of the game. But if you know the mechanics for the 4-player game, you know the mechanics for the 10-player game.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that. Like expandability. Okay.
Red Dragon Inn, recommended. The other game we played is Ticket to Ride. I don't know if we've discussed this one on the podcast before. What an elegant, beautiful game Ticket to Ride is.
Ticket to Ride is an excellent gateway drug if you're trying to introduce people that don't like board games to non-standard board games, like something that's not Monopoly, something that's not Scrabble. It's great because the rules are fairly straightforward. It's easy to understand, and the turns are very quick.
Yes. On your turn, you can take one action. And then while the other people are taking their turns, you can plan out your action for your next turn. So that it moves pretty rapidly.
Yes. This was a big deal for people that I was trying to introduce games to, is quick turn actions. There are games that are really complex and like you can get really into. But like if anybody's ever sat down to play a game of Axis and Allies, if you have a short attention span, that game is not for you.
Right.
Ticket to Ride is the opposite end of that spectrum.
But it's also not a game like Uno where it's a short turn length, but you're really not doing much. Like, you can have some strategy in Ticket to Ride. There's multiple ways to get to the victory path, and you can interact with the other players. It's got a lot of depth without a lot of complexity. And that was probably the biggest group I'd ever had, where we took 2 players that had played it before and 4 that hadn't, and we just got them going from never seen it before to they feel like they're comfortable and know what they're doing in the space of about 5 minutes.
And what's great about that is then it puts this little question in the back of those 4 people's minds. It's like, this board game was really fun. I never heard of it before. What other board games have I never heard before that are fun?
Yeah. But if you haven't tried Ticket to Ride, there's different flavors of it. Highly recommended. Pick one up.
You were at the game store. Did you do the thing like when everybody was leaving? All right, bye, everybody. It's like, oh, that game was really fun. Do you have any others? Be like, psh, kid, come over here. I got some Magic the Gathering packs that you need to take a look at. First one's free.
I don't think we got any Magic players out of that. So, but the lesson here is that if you want to play some games in your work life, at least in the military, just plan it ahead, make some work objectives, and then you can go spend some time out of the office playing some games. I got to play disc golf and Red Dragon Inn and Ticket to Ride on and get paid for it.
So our firm just moved to a smaller office. We moved from like an office where everybody had their own office to an executive suite where the idea is that 3 of the 4 of us are going to be working from home full time. And then my boss has said we're going to get together once a month, and half the day will be meetings and talking about strategic planning and all that, and the other half of the day will be camaraderie and team building.
Yes, you, sir, important, not urgent.
You gave me an excellent idea, suggestion how we can spend that other half of the day. I could just bring a bunch of random board games that I own that I could explain to them quickly and play.
So for our main segment today, Josh, Disney just finished releasing the last episode of The Mandalorian Season 3. Listeners, buckle up. Spoilers for Star Wars are coming your way.
So The Mandalorian, again, even in Season 3, has just reasserted itself as my favorite venture into Star Wars canon and lore that we have gotten in mainstream media thus far.
I wouldn't go that far.
You wouldn't go that far?
No, I like Andor better.
I didn't like Andor as much as Mandalorian.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. The story... we're not talking about Andor. I think the storyline of The Mandalorian is much more coherent, much more focused, and much more interesting than Andor was.
All right. So let's talk about Mandalorian.
All right. Where do you want to start? We're going to episode
we
breakdown?
can do kind of the stuff that's swirling around outside of it. I mean, we know that Disney's viewership on Disney Plus platforms kind of dwindling, and this was their premier killer feature that they were trying to use to draw people in. And so there's a lot riding on them making it be consistently good quality.
There is, and I think they nailed it. I just think they nailed it. Can I? All right. It's so good. It's so good. I don't know where to start. I think. All right. So here's where I want to start. I think is they did this thing, and I didn't realize until about halfway through the season that they changed the plurality of the Mandalorian in the title. Because the first two seasons, when you read The Mandalorian, you thought to yourself...
Din Djarin.
Din Djarin. Everybody calls him Mando. Like, the guy. Pedro Pascal, everybody loves him.
Right.
Like, that's what The Mandalorian meant. This season, like, there was a transition. And, like, I recognized it in myself. Like, halfway through, The Mandalorian came up on the screen. And I wasn't reading it as referring to Din Djarin. I read it as referring to the Mandalorian people.
The people of... Descent
Mandalore.
of the planet Mandalore.
That's right.
Okay. You think that was deliberate?
I think that it was a deliberate decision on the writing staff or the producer or whoever to try to expand this story, recognizing that, like I talked about this when we talked about The Mandalorian the first two times. The Mandalorians are awesome. There's such great story behind everything that is happening here, and we just got dropped in the middle of it. And I think they recognized at one point that, we don't have to keep focusing on this random guy. We could, expand this out a little bit and like tell more of a story in the Star Wars galaxy than just this guy's trials and tribulations.
I don't know. I think it may have been deliberate. I think there may be a grand arc that was happening from the very beginning. We start zoomed in on this one guy who doesn't even know what he wants in the world. He's... been disgraced, and he's looking for a purpose, and he's just out there hunting for bounties. And then he bumps into the kid, and the kid kind of gives him a reason to care about things. And then that draws him back into his people, and then he becomes one with their cause, and then that becomes the grand story arc.
All right. So your presumption here is that then they've planned out like 15 seasons of The Mandalorian, and this is just them ramping up into season 4 and 5.
Maybe. I've heard this could be the last season of The Mandalorian, and I think they ended it in such a way that if there was never another season, it would be okay.
No, false. Because the spoilers already, but the last episode, like, it ends with them on the planet of Mandalore, and they're doing their ceremonies in the living waters, like with this super important thing for their religion, and they go through this thing where they induct Grogu as Din Djarin's actual adopted child, and he became an apprentice Mandalorian, okay?
Uh-huh.
But he doesn't wear the helmet. They didn't put a tiny Mandalorian helmet on Grogu, and I will not rest. I will picket Disney until they show me on TV.
Okay,
Grogu
I'm going to
helmet.
reduce this down to an ongoing argument that you and I have, Josh. I think it's important that there are non-believers that expect the believers to follow the tenets of their religion.
Well, I don't care. I don't care if Grogu can take it on or off or whatever, and he falls into the other sect like Katie Sackhoff or Bo-Katan, and she can take his helmet on and off, whatever. I don't care. I want to see a tiny Grogu with his helmet on. That's what I want.
All right, so according to you, then there needs to be another season of The Mandalorian just to resolve that one glaring oversight.
You look me in the eye and tell me you don't want to see Din Djarin and Grogu back to back in matching Beskar armor, like kicking a crap out of a bunch of Imperial stormtroopers. Tell me that wouldn't be the best.
We kind of got to see that.
Yes, but he wasn't wearing the helmet.
They took on the red ones, which are supposed to be the bad guys.
The Praetorians,
the Praetorians.
Yes, I got that, and it was. I will say, there's a fight scene between Din Djarin fighting these three Praetorians and Grogu was contributing in very specific and important ways that made the choreography really realistic. Like,
yeah, it didn't feel like that scene where Yoda was lightsaber fighting in the Star Wars prequels where he was just flipping all over the place. It didn't mean anything.
Oh man, don't ever watch the original. Like, if you didn't like that, then don't watch the original Clone Wars cartoons. There was like 3 like hand animated cartoons where they first introduced like a bunch of characters. Like,
and Yoda was
Grievous.
It was in the Clone Wars.
Yeah, Yoda was like during the Battle of Coruscant. It's canon. Yoda stood out on like a balcony somewhere at one point and like put his hands up and force pulled 2 of those giant droid transports into each other.
Okay.
Mace Windu like jumped on a vulture droid and like ripped its programming out and was holding the wires like reins and rode it around like a chariot, cutting down other spaceships with his lightsaber for a while. It was awesome.
So thus far, we have gone 24 episodes. Season 1, Season 2, Season 3 were each 8 episodes. They all have their own internal arcs, and then there's this grand arc that's happening.
I will say this season had a couple of miss episodes for me where it's like...
I agree.
What are we doing here? Like, there was... What was it? Episode 3, The Convert, where the first 10 minutes was awesome with Bo-Katan and Jin, like, dogfighting with TIE interceptors, which is awesome. And then they jump into hyperspace and we get 40 minutes of Coruscant, like, politics
on Coruscant.
I don't care about this guy.
Okay. So I feel like they lost their footing a bit there. I don't know what was going on. It may have been when the production of this was happening in relation to the reception of Andor, but it felt like they were trying to do the kind of thing that was happening in Andor in this, in that we're introducing other characters, we're spending time on them, we're giving them motivation and backstory, and we're expanding the numbers of threads that we have going in this universe.
Do you watch a lot of anime?
No.
Okay.
No.
So most popular animes like come out concurrently with the mangas which they're based on. The problem is the turnaround time for an anime is much faster than the turnaround time for a manga. And so animes will commonly have this thing called filler episodes where we need to release content, but we cannot advance the plot because we don't know what the plot is going to be.
That sounds horrible.
That's why they're called filler episodes. Episode 3 of this show felt like a filler episode where like there's story we need to tell, but like honestly, this entire thing could have been a throwaway line by one of the characters instead of a whole episode. You're right,
it could have. There was 2 new characters that were introduced, Dr. Pershing and Elia Kane. I think their names had been elsewhere in the universe.
No, they were. Dr. Pershing was in the first season. He was the guy in the glasses that took Grogu that was going to do the experiments with him when
I didn't even remember that. It had been too long.
But it doesn't matter. This is the thing, like the whole episode was like talking about like him doing his work. Like he's just trying to be a new good citizen on Coruscant, but then he's going to try to ramp in and like on the slide get back into like the experiments that he was conducting. But then he just gets killed at the end. So the whole thing didn't even matter.
He didn't get killed though.
Oh yeah. Oh no, he didn't get killed. He got accidentally left in a room by himself with another ex-Imperial and a machine that wipes memories, but like, oh no, it doesn't liquefy your brain. Yes, it does. I know what this is. This is a brain fryer. It's like, no. It's only a brain fryer if you turn it up past 3, and we're only going to put it on 2. But then we're going to turn it on. We're going to leave you in here, and we're all going to leave. And then this double agent in the other room, like, you can't tell me that like, oh, here is a bomb. I have a bomb right here, but it's totally safe because it only blows up if you push the green button. Unless you take away the green button, it's still a bomb.
Here's the thing about Season 3, Episode 3, why I was okay with it up to a point. It went and spent some time on Coruscant, which one I was ready for. Like, I want to go spend some time on Coruscant. Like, remember the scene where they walk over there and there's like this hill?
It's like a little rock, yeah.
Yeah, a little rock poking up, and they're like, that's the highest mountain on Coruscant. It's the only portion of the surface remaining that you can see.
So clearly you still haven't watched any of the Clone Wars cartoons because they spent a ton of time on Coruscant.
No, I haven't. But that's a cartoon.
It's still canon.
This is the cinematic universe where they've gone to the trouble to fully realize it, where it looks and feels like a real place.
You've insulted me in 4 different ways, and I'm trying to pick the one that I want to call out on.
You're trying to pick which one to do it first?
Yeah.
So one, I don't know how much of this production budget, their production budget, it eats to do this, but I like spending time on Coruscant and feeling like they're fleshing out the place.
Oh, they don't. What do you mean?
Usually, it feels like in Mandalorian, and particularly the Book of Boba Fett, where they're like, "All right, how can we spend the least amount of our production budget on sets and computer animation? So let's go to some far-off planet that's mostly woods. We'll build a tiny hut, and that'll be it for the production." But when they go to Coruscant and they're wandering through majestic hallways and flying across landscapes, it feels like a world.
No. That's got to be the cheapest episode they produced because all of the digital assets already exist. They made all of them for like the prequel movies.
I don't know why you think this. I don't know why you think that this all is just sitting on a shelf somewhere and they can just pull it off and use it.
That is absolutely what Disney does all the time, especially in the digital era. Anytime now that you create a digital asset, that's going to stay in their archives forever. Didn't you ever, like, they do this all the time. Didn't you see like the Jungle Book and then as a kid and then you go and watch
and they rotoscoped it and they just changed out the tracing over the top of the characters and did the exact same dance moves and
for Robin Hood.
Yeah.
It's uncanny how many of those scenes are just
so you tell me like in Toy Story 2 when they went back to Andy's house that they just took that off the shelf and reused it from Toy Story 1?
So obviously the technology had changed and there was changes that they had to make to it, but the skeletal, like the characters, like the 3D skeletons of these characters, maybe they changed the textures, maybe they changed the lighting effects, whatever, but yeah, the actual digital assets, like the shapes that these characters were made out of, was still on a disc somewhere.
Okay. So the other thing that they did in episode 3 that I was on board with was they started digging into, I think, what it would be like after the Empire had fallen. Like, what do you do? This is the kind of thing we experience in humanity. Like, all right, World War II's over. We've got all these Nazis sitting around. Do we just kill them all? No, that just turns us into them. So we want to reintegrate them into society, but we don't want them to rise to positions of authority where they can just rebuild what they were doing. So we want to reintegrate them, but we want to keep an eye on them. And that whole thing was going out throughout that episode. I'm interested in exploring that idea. Does it belong in The Mandalorian? Maybe not.
Probably not. That's definitely more of an Andor thing, I feel like. But Andor was set before the fall of the Empire, blah, blah, blah. But, I get that idea. Like, you have all these people, but at some point you got to acknowledge, like, dude, I just worked on the ship. Like, I applied for a job at the Imperial Outpost, and they gave me a janitor duty on a Star Destroyer. That does not make me a space Nazi. I was just trying to feed my family. Like, there's got to be levels.
But specifically, Dr. Pershing, this is someone of high, imagine the guy from the Marvel Universe that worked for the Red Skeleton, Red Skull.
Yeah. Like Zoloff, Like, you want to
somebody high up that had a lot of power, that was doing unethical things, and now we're going to reintegrate him. Do we want him to carry on with his work, or do we want him to do something else?
So here's my problem specifically that they brought up in this episode is because, like you're talking about, we want to reintegrate these people back into society. Oh, but all of this hardware that the Empire spent trillions of credits presumably to build, like this naval infrastructure? No, we're going to dismantle every chunk of that. That makes no sense to me. They had these giant shipyards where capital ships were being disassembled for parts. Like, why? They are working ships.
I'll tell you why, Josh. What were they called? They were called
Star
Destroyers.
That's just
we're not in the business of destroying stars anymore. We're the peaceful New Republic.
Well, that's a class of ship. Like, they were just cruisers. Like, presumably, they all had their own names.
I get it. You could take a World War II era battleship and use it to transport, merchandise. But is it really well suited for that? No. It's probably best to just take it apart and take the materials.
No. You still you're still a government. You still need a functioning naval presence for enforcement in the galaxy. Like, they showed it in multiple episodes. They had this. They had this outpost where there were X-wings that would patrol, going out and and taking care of stuff, which felt very Italy, late World War II style, because it's this air base that's kind of there, but very deployed, not a lot of infrastructure in there, just kind of hanging out. Anyway, but those guys have jobs to do, and they are fighting pirates and trying to enforce the rules of the Republic. You would be really helpful doing that? A capital ship to back you up.
Yeah, but there's a deliberate effort made after a major conflict to dial things back so that it isn't ever present.
There's a difference between dialing back and then re-spending the entirety of the military budget for decades after this buildup.
Okay, let's not get too bogged down on episode 3.
Okay.
It didn't work for you and me for different reasons. Me, I thought, what are we doing? Mando, or are we doing Andor? I'm on board if it's Andor, but make up your mind. You didn't like it at all.
I did like that they went real deep onto the Mandalorian culture and the specifically the schism between Mando's sect and the rest of Mandalorians, where it's just we identify as Mandalorians, but we're not zealots. Versus Din Djarin and those guys are this is the word and this is the way.
I want to talk about that for a minute because you have these people that all have the common origin of the planet of Mandalore, that because of the Civil War and the Imperial interference, that they thought either the planet was uninhabitable and they got scattered across the galaxy and thought they couldn't go back there. So one of the big parts of the plot arc of this season 3 is that we find out the Mandalore is actually habitable, and now what do we do about it?
And we find that out for the stupidest reason. It's because Mando tried to go back to his sect you are an outcast because you took your helmet off once. How dare you? He's like, well, how can I get redeemed? It's like, oh, you have to go bathe in the living waters of Mandalore.
But that's impossible,
but
so
you
can't be
go
redeemed.
there. Right. And so, like, he acknowledges that he's going to go on a suicide mission just to try to get back, like, his old bunk at the covert.
Yeah.
I mean, that's dedication, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's meant to feel like that. So Mando goes back and finds out that, yeah, it's dangerous there, and Bo-Katan has to save his skin. But
a couple of times.
Yeah, but it is actually habitable, and the stuff's still there, sufficiently enough that it starts to revive this idea among the remnant of the Mandalorians that they can go back, but they're not going to be able to do it unless they can get over their petty differences and come together.
And that's when the shift happens, because Bo-Katan is now in the storyline, and Bo-Katan Kryze is like the heir to the throne of Mandalore. And there's a whole bunch of backstory of that, and she is also in the Clone Wars cartoons. I have to take a tangent real quick, because they got Katie Sackhoff, one of my oldest celebrity crushes, because I've had a crush on her since Battlestar Galactica, because she can just get it. And it was funny because they brought her on as the voice actress for her character, Bo-Katan Kryze, in the Clone Wars cartoons that I keep telling you to watch. Uh-huh. And Jon Favreau told her when they picked her up to do that voice, and he's like, we're going to make this live action someday. And she totally blew him off, like, oh, okay, uh-huh.
Right.
Here we are, fast forward however many years it's been. And she said, like, the first day that she showed up on set for filming in full costume as Bo-Katan Kryze, she said Jon Favreau pointed like, I told you.
Wow. That's a cool backstory. Okay, so her character it has basically kind of just given up. She'd fought Mando for the dark sword and lost or whatever, or she didn't get it and decided she didn't want to kill him to get it.
Moff Gideon had it. Mando beat Moff Gideon and got it from him. And then she didn't want to kill Din Djarin, or presumably she thought maybe she couldn't beat Din Djarin, so she didn't try to kill him for it, and she just didn't have it.
Yeah. And so now she doesn't have a purpose. She doesn't see what can unite the people. But the fact that now it's been revealed that Mandalore is habitable gives her something to sink her teeth into. She steps up to her role as the leader of her people and starts to unify everyone. Be the leader.
I think there was a transition that happened before that, because like I felt like she went to help Mando just because. But when Mando went and saw her first before he went to the surface, she was completely despondent, like you're talking about. Like she's out of it. Like, oh, I lost the Darksaber, and after I lost that, all of my forces evaporated, and they're all mercenaries now, so screw it. I'm just going to live out the rest of my days in this castle. And, like, she had to get, like, crowbarred out of her chair to go save Mando when he was screwed down on the surface. And then he fell down the hole because he took his jetpack off before he stepped off this... it's stairs. It's like step, 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 bottomless pit into this ocean. Like, didn't you check first, Mando? But then she saves him out of that, and then she was just going to go home. But on her way home, that's when the TIE bomber showed up and blew up her freaking castle.
Right.
And she needed some place.
Pulled her into it. Now she needed a place to belong, so she goes to his old coven or whatever they're called, tribe.
Covert. That's the thing. And then they brought up the fact that, like, you bathed in the waters of Mandalore. You're clean. Have you taken your helmet off since then? No, I guess I haven't. Welcome, sister. Open arms. And then, like, she gets, like, kind of re-indoctrinated into this.
No, you're right. And it was a very believable plot point that she felt a sense of belonging and purpose being part of this tribe.
And what was great about it is it really did feel like a transition. Because when she stepped off that thing for the first time, it was clear she had all of her old prejudices from earlier seasons where, like, you all are zealot psychos. But actually living and being with them for a while, recognize that, no, there's still value. Like, maybe she doesn't prescribe to it this hardcore, but the same way that, I don't know, a Jewish person can respect an Orthodox Jewish person, like, that's the kind of respect that she developed.
Yeah. There was also an idea they were exploring that I like, and that is that we always have our differences. No matter how small you zoom in on our circles of influence and friendship, there you can find areas where we differ. And if you focus on the differences, you can be split apart, even if it's someone as close as your own spouse. But then if you're attacked from the outside, it helps you bind together. And once the Mandalorians stopped fighting each other and realized the threats that were outside, it bound them all together. And they started, 4 or 5 different groups of Mandalorians that all ended up together by the time it built up to the climatic battle at the end.
Yeah, and they were all unified under like presumably Bo-Katan, but also just the idea that we all belong to Mandalore. And I think that gave them enough of a mutual respect that they could, the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing, at least for now.
Yeah. So, like you said, Mando kind of becomes, he's still the lead character, but he's less the central figure in all of this.
Right. Which, honestly, like I said, like just that zooming out and like absorbing a little bit more of the Mandalorian culture was nice, and I appreciated the story beats.
Yeah. And they're all over the place. I mean, the episode where they were trying to go get some of the Mandalorians that were off on that one planet, and they ran into Jack Black and Lizzo and had to go on a side quest.
That was the other episode I could have done without.
Where the droids were revolting. Well, I mean, again, there's another idea that if they really want to explore it, I'm on board. Like, do droids have rights? What if they, what?
That's true. And that was some aspects of that episode were interesting. Like, They went to I found a card for a droid bar. Let's go check out the droid bar. And they walk, and it's a spar of droids.
And they're all having a good time, but then when the humans come in, they pretend like they weren't.
Well, yeah, and then what's funny is like the jukebox did the thing where it like screeched and everybody's looking at them as they're walking up to the bar. And that scene was funny because Mando like hates droids, and that's
right.
That's like canon. But at the same time, the entire time they were there, I just couldn't stop screaming at the screen, why do droids have a bar? Why do droids have time off? Are they people or are they robots? Like, are they property or are they individuals?
I'm with you. Like, if we're doing this, let's do this.
Yeah, pick a lane, Star Wars, because I can't figure out, is this slave labor or are they just people? Why do they have bars if they don't ever stop working? I don't understand.
Yeah. I'm with you. Okay, so, then at the end of that episode, there's that plot twist where it's revealed that because when Bo came to rescue Mando, he'd already had the Darksaber stolen, and she won it back through combat. She now is the rightful holder of the Darksaber and uses that as her precipitating event to take control of the scattered Mandalorian forces.
Which was awesome.
Okay, so then we get into the last two episodes. The second to last episode was called The Spies. I don't know why it was called that. I spent the whole episode waiting to see who the spies were, and there never were any.
Nope, it was just Mandalorians being cool and infiltrating Mandalorian or the Mandalore.
Until what's his name
Moff
shows
Gideon.
up again. Moff Gideon shows up with all kinds of new weapons and new forces. The bad guys, the good guys were not ready, and they get ambushed, and everything looks hopeless.
That was all right. So that was a cool story twist for me. Moff Gideon, his secret base this whole time has been on Mandalore, and he has been mining the Beskar, and he's been creating Imperial style Beskar armor, and he's been training a new generation of stormtroopers in Mandalorian tactics and weaponry. Because all of these Imperial versions of Mandalorians had jetpacks, flamethrowers, like the grappling hooks, like they were what Imperial Mandalorians would be. Like Moff Gideon, it's just such a. Like, this is the guy that showed up to Mandalore and was like, we could use this.
Yeah, Beskar. So let's kill everyone, take the planet for ourselves. And then there's the thing where, like, meanwhile, in the background, he was working with Dr. Pershing to revive his cloning technology to make clones of himself that not only are the perfected version of himself, but then it all goes all the way back to season 1, and this is why Moff Gideon wanted Grogu, was so that he could utilize Grogu's force sensitivity to give it to his clones so they would be strong and powerful and force sensitive.
How megalomaniac do you have to be that, like, I want to not only take over the galaxy, I want to take over the galaxy with a cloned army of myself?
I don't know. I thought it was kind of weird that when they decided to clone somebody, they just picked a random bounty hunter for the original clone army. Like, you'll do.
Well, that was Jango Fett, and up to that point, Jango Fett had a track record of actually standing toe-to-toe with several Jedi, so he was legit, and he was a Mandalorian.
Okay. All right, so then we come to the climatic battle, the return.
Oh, hey, right before we do that, I have to point this out. This was so dumb. The second to last episode where the big guy, like, has been the antagonist for Mando for a couple of times, but then he said...
Baz Vizsla.
Oh, is that his name? Well, he's the guy that's flying around with the minigun. Yeah. And he does the thing that you always see in these shows where it's like, oh, there's too many. It's like, I will stay behind and guard the door and make sure that you all can escape.
It worked for me. Tell me it didn't work for you?
Here's the problem. The reason it didn't work for me is because he looked at Bo-Katan and he said, there's too many. Go. I'll hold them off. And then he proceeded to kill All of them. Like, there was a point where, like, he stopped and all of the bad guys were dead and he was just standing there like, and I wanted him so badly to say out loud, "Oh, I guess there wasn't too many of them."
But then more showed up and there was actually
But then
too many.
that was just yes. It was an excuse for the Praetorian to come out and like, oh, well, this guy just mowed down like a whole force of guys. And then these Praetorian came and just shut him down in seconds. It was the introduction to how awesome the Praetorians are. I get it. But at the same time, it just didn't, I just wanted that line to be said.
Well, there was something interesting that was happening with his character there where, like, in our life, we might have a moment where we could do something of extreme valor, but most of the time you just don't, that opportunity doesn't come up.
Yeah.
Like, you just don't get thrust into a set of circumstances where your only choice is to stand single-handedly against an overwhelming advancing foe.
No matter how often it happens in movies, it actually doesn't come up that often in real life.
Yeah. So there were no spies, even though they called that episode The Spies. That was weird. And now we're at the return. Moff Gideon and his troopers are trying to reclaim the planet. The Mandalorians decide they're not going to give him any time to regroup or build his forces anymore, and they're going to marshal their forces and attack now.
Yes, and I do like the guy that went for reinforcements, like jetpacked out and jetpacked into
orbit.
Yeah, that seems legit too. Like that would freak me out. Like, do you have a thing for heights? Can you imagine leaving the planet's atmosphere on a jetpack?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about the climatic battle. I know your mind like can replay these scenes in great detail and you think about all the plot points that happen, but to me it's just like, all right, what are we doing here? At the end, it's Moff Gideon's defeated, the Mandalorians have been restored, and now they have access to the Forge and the holy waters and all that, and everything's fine.
There was a great fight between Moff Gideon and both Bo-Katan and Grogu and Din Djarin. And at one point, like, you could tell, my son even asked, like, why is his armor making all these noises? Well, clearly it's powered armor. You see how strong he is? Like, these actual Mandalorians are throwing punches at this elderly guy, and he's totally holding his own and beating them. And at one point, like, Bo-Katan swings the Darksaber at him, and he catches her hand and crushes the Darksaber in her hand until it no longer functions. Like, yeah. Audible gasps from me, okay? Because, like, the line he said...
I was like, oh, I guess that's not whatever. That's not a plot point anymore, that who has the Darksaber.
Well, Moff Gideon only cared about the Darksaber because he thought that it could be a tool for him to use to leverage to get more Mandalorians to, like, follow him.
Fight for him,
yeah. And then at that point in the story, he'd just given up on that thought entirely and just like, screw it, I've got my own Mandalorians now.
Yeah.
Oh, also, hang on. We found all the clones of Moff Gideon, and then Din Djarin hit 3 buttons on a console, and they all exploded.
Yeah.
And then my wife watched it with me, was like, wait, why is that an option? Aren't these important to him?
Why is there a self-destruct? Why do we even have that lever?
My counter-argument to that was, this is obviously an evil base. Everything is rigged to self-destruct. Obviously. This is Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated. Like, everything's ready to blow up.
That you gave it a pass, but she wasn't willing to. Okay, so then we have the climatic moment where we've defeated Moff Gideon, or we're about to, and we have our sort of nuclear family of Bo and Din and Grogu standing there as the capital class starship is crashing into the surface of Mandalore, and Grogu does the Groot power.
Yes, he does the force bubble of, like, we are invulnerable to all damage for this moment. And this was awesome, and the music swelled, and, like, you got to see, like, Bo-Katan and Jin, like, looking around like, holy crap, this is really impressive. And I know this was an important thing, and I know this was a climactic moment, but all I could think the whole time was, wow, a capital starship just crashed into this base. That floor is really structurally sound.
Yeah. So I don't know if it was a merchandising decision, but the fact that Grogu never grew up over the time period of these 24 episodes was interesting, because all of his growth kind of had to happen in just really small external ways. Now we never even mentioned this. Grogu got a mech suit.
Oh yeah, at one point which was dumb. That was
You didn't like it? I dug it.
I liked the droid
falling
better.
around in the floating egg thing just didn't feel very useful. As he was going to progress towards becoming a Mandalorian warrior, he needed something a little more dangerous than a floating egg.
But at the same time, in this season, they demonstrated, like, in a little training bout between him and one of the other, like, apprentices, like, he can jump around and hold his own, like, kind of, in combat.
Oh, yeah, there was a little thing with the paintball guns.
Yeah, little paintball guns on his wrist, and he totally owned the other guy after, like, he's like, you can go ahead and force jump. It's fine. Like, go ahead. But then we gave him, like, for some reason we had to get IG-7's body back, which was a statue. Like, and again, Mando being
droid
droid
I don't understand
racist.
their loyalty to IG-11, IG-12, all that. Yeah.
This Mando is droid racist, and he liked that droid. And so he's like, I don't want the same model. I want that droid. Like, that droid exploded and melted into lava. It's like, I don't care. Find the mechanics to fix it. I'm like, you are asking some really seriously difficult questions.
And at the very end, he's accomplished that purpose. He does reassemble it.
Kind of, yeah. And, like, that's the new sheriff of town, is this assassin droid.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the themes that you see exhibited in that little vignette you just gave is this theme of fatherhood, parenthood, where he's trying to raise Grogu up, and there's those little moments where he's trying to build his confidence, like we talked about in the last episode.
Yeah.
Where he's like, okay, you have to do something dangerous now, and I might not be comfortable with it, but I can't choose. This is the moment. Will you be up to the challenge or not?
Mm-hmm. Well, how... In the same season, like, he encouraged him, here, put this paintball gun on your wrist and then kick the crap out of that other kid. Go for it. And then he's like, oh, hang on, a robot that can walk around, like, as he's driving it? I don't think he's old enough for that. Like, where are your...
I love it. That's a great metaphor for, like, a parent being like, I don't know if I want them driving yet.
Yeah, but, like, where are your lines, man? Deadly combat? I mean, that's just going to happen every day, but walking around in a mech suit that's, like, slightly higher than you usually are? I don't know. That seems sketchy.
Yes. So there's a lot of stuff swirling around the outside of this production, and that is, Pedro Pascal, went popular in, like, 3 major intellectual properties this year, including The Last of Us on HBO, which I haven't watched, but I understand he was main character in that. And then, if you haven't yet watched it, he did an episode of Hot Ones, that show where they go and eat the spicy hot wings.
I have not seen that. I'm going to right now.
Oh, yeah. I'll put a link in the show notes. There's lots of spin-offs that are happening around this. We had the Book of Boba Fett that came out in 2021. Ahsoka's coming out later this year.
Hashtag Ahsoka Best Jedi.
Skeleton Crew has been announced. It may or may not be coming out. But swirling around all of this, all of these plot threads, is the rumor that was floated in December 2020 that there's an untitled Mandalorian movie going to be coming out.
You literally just gave me goosebumps. Like, I get that this show has given us more content than any one movie could, but there is a budget that comes with a movie that these shows aren't getting that could be amazing. Like, I know that's the thing I'm excited about, is the potential.
There was some fun.
As long as it's both written and produced by Jon Favreau, then I'll be on board.
So there were some fun cameos in this season. We had Jack Black and Lizzo, which were fine. They were cute. Christopher Lloyd is the guy that was programming the droid uprising. But my favorite one was kind of a small one, and that was Ahmed Best as Kelleran Beck, in a flashback to the conflict that happened surrounding Order 66, and him being one of the Jedis that protected people and saved people and rescued people, that set up the success of the future here. And Ahmed Best was the same actor who played Jar Jar Binks, one of the most hated characters in all of the Star Wars universe, and now he's playing a Jedi who saved the day. So it was like this redemption for this actor in the Star Wars universe.
That's kind of nice, yeah. It's like, the best Star Wars character I ever played was actually this guy in a 30-second flashback.
Yeah. So what did you think of the ending? How do you feel like it wrapped up? Because I mentioned to you before we started that I felt like they left it at a place where it could just be, they could never touch it again and it would be fine. And I think that was on purpose.
They could, absolutely. Because what ended up happening was, Mandalore society is getting it restarted on the planet somewhere. Then Grogu got adopted as Jin's actual kid and then therefore apprentice without the helmet. But then he went back and he took on a bounty hunter job with the with the New Republic guys that showed up, and then he's got a little cabin on Nevarro, his other planet that he's a big fan of. And so yeah, it kind of almost went full circle where now we have like Jin out doing his bounty hunter thing, and the whole plot line with Bo-Katan and everything's kind of wrapped up, and the big bad had a capital ship crashed into him, which is pretty lethal last time I checked. So if they did a season 4 of Mandalorian, which my son insists that they are already filming, they're gonna have to start it from scratch. And so I think we're gonna get some kind of episodic stuff like we did in season 1, which was still fun, going to do random jobs on random planets or whatever, and until the big bad guy reveals himself and turns into another big old thing.
Yeah. Well, I liked it. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Definitely a worthy diversion. I enjoyed the time in the Star Wars universe. I liked the character arcs. I liked the development of Grogu and Din Djarin and Bo-Katan, all the main characters, and I think that's ultimately what held it all together.
I'm going to give this an 8.5. It gets marked down for episode 3. The best meme I saw about this was I saw some short video on the internet. It's like the best way to watch episode 3 of The Mandalorian. And it just showed like the scene where they were done fighting the TIE fighters and then the Mandalorians jump into hyperspace. And then it just starts fast forwarding, and it fast forwards through everything that happened on Coruscant. And then it goes back to regular play as the ships come out of hyperspace and they go to the Mandalorian covert. Like skipped everything that happened on Coruscant.
Yeah, but there's no way you would have known to do that. I get that. And later on when they flash to, I forget her character's name because it doesn't matter, Elia Kane, kind of in the background working for Moff Gideon, pulling the strings and stuff. Like if you didn't even know all of that, it still wouldn't matter, I don't think.
Do you know what I want, Ben? All right, if there's going to be a season 4 of Mandalorian or if there's going to be a movie, I want a time skip. I want there to be a 5 or 10 year time skip, and I want to see a more, an older Grogu with the armor doing like Mandalorian combat with some Force additions. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I imagine the movie will be, they'll introduce some conflict where Moff Gideon has gathered some forces and is invading, and the fate of the Mandalore is at stake.
Moff Gideon's dead now. He's died. He's dead. Well, they've got other bad guys that they can introduce. Trust me, there's no end to bad guys.
All right. I think it would be good I think what would make a good plot for a movie is to kind of go back on some of the unity that they've given. Like, yes, we're fighting an external enemy and that brings us all together, but we still have our differences. Can we unite and rebuild our planet, or are we going to let our infighting tear us apart and weaken us against our external enemies?
I want a Grogu growing into his own and like really demonstrating that he has what it takes, fighting alongside an aged and on his way out Din Djarin in a situation where Grogu's got to leave him behind, or else they're both going to die. And having that kind of a emotional point.
I like that. I had one Star Wars assumption that I finally had to disabuse myself of, and that was that Grogu was always going to come around and become a Jedi because that was the ultimate thing you could become. And finally, I just had to realize, no, he's going to be a Mandalorian.
Yeah, he's going to be a Mandalorian with Force powers. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. And this is the thing that you have to remember is that Mandalorian is not just a race of people; it's a religion. Like they said, Din Djarin isn't born of Mandalore. He is a foundling that is prescribing to the Mandalorian religion. Jedi is not a race or a class of people; it is a religion. Yeah. And so Grogu just chose the Mandalorian religion over the Jedi one. That's all.
Wow, I think that's a good way to put it. And a good place to wrap up our discussion.
Sounds good to me. If you like what we do, consider sharing us with a friend. If you like us, maybe your friends will like us too. If you really want to show us some love, consider taking your phone out of your pocket and giving us a good review on the podcast player of your choice.
Please.
We get so much great visibility from that. Please do. And if you want me and Ben to spoil all of the Star Wars from now until the end of time, please consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page.
And until next time, try to be a little less bad at magic.